Then here we go. Plat Chat Overwatch, episode 142. I've amassed the greatest minds in Overwatch and Avast. And we're here to talk about the Summer Showdown stage tournament. I'm producing and I'm hosting at the same time, so it's a bit all over the place. But don't worry about the time. Why am I saying the timestamp thing again? Don't worry about it. It's gonna be great. So yeah, we got the Summer Showdown stage playoffs. Stop laughing, Custa. Ahead of us. So let's kick things off and talk about the teams that didn't actually make it to the stage, because there were quite a few interesting teams that didn't make it at all. And then we'll dive into the actual playoffs itself and the teams that qualified and everything like that. So if no one else has any Arnold Schwarzenegger stories to bring up, let's jump into the LA Gladiators.
Well, actually, did you guys see the person who tweeted at all of us about the meme of the mud on the Arnold Schwarzenegger that he doesn't do up his butt and then you can see his butt?
Yes, I did see that.
What are you talking?
Yeah, I didn't get the tag. I missed out on that one.
You guys in there? Oh, yeah, let me get you
that one went to my spam folder. Yeah, tag me.
Tag me real quick, Scott. Give me a Predator conversation and
someone completely irrelevant made a meme about it, and then someone from the Overwatch League community tagged all of us relevant to it. I'll get it for you. Don't worry, guys.
But not me though.
No, I think
even though I'm the one fighting for it.
Yeah, well, 1 second. Let me see if I can find it. I think you were tagged in it. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Where are you posting this?
I'm just gonna.
Are you giving it to me?
Yeah. I'll give it to you, Johnny, and you can spread the love.
All right.
Giving it to you in Discord. Sorry to derail things.
No, this is perfect.
People need to know. People need to know.
This is why we're Plat Chat. All right. There's only one Plat Chat.
There you go.
All right. I'm gonna bring this up.
Who does the meme work in favor of here?
I don't think anyone.
No, that actually clearly demonstrates
Arnold.
Butt cheeks.
That clearly demonstrates that he didn't cover his ass, so the Predator could find him. Thus, the mud insulates.
Okay, but here's why I don't think it's realistic. I think that Arnold would have thought of this. Like, why would it? Is it like a sensitive issue for him? Like, why would he not muddy up the butt cheeks?
That is a question.
It's an oversight that I don't believe in.
Did Arnold? Most bodybuilders have poor flex. A lot of bodybuilders have really because of how big they are, they can't necessarily reach all the places on their body.
You're saying
you think Arnold was too big to reach his ass?
It's too big to reach around and put mud on his ass.
He's pretty big, honestly.
He was huge back in the day.
Problem,
Peak Arnold was a very big man.
How does he wipe his ass if he can't put mud on it?
100%. And maybe that's why his butt was so clean, because he used the bidet after mudding himself.
If he's sitting on the toilet, that's a different angle. If you go from the undercarriage.
So why couldn't he sit down and put mud on it? Okay, go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. You just back into the mud, ass first into the mud. That's what you do.
Oh, that's true. You could.
That's how you put it on. Yeah,
that works. But I mean, he clearly wasn't thinking at the time about that. He was fighting for his life.
The reason I'm right is it would be impossible to mud yourself up 100% to not be giving off any thermal, as proven by the webcomic.
No, that wasn't what you were arguing.
Yeah, that's exactly.
You were arguing that the mud would not stop thermals, not that he couldn't adequately cover themselves up.
Well, I'm also arguing for that because that's just pure logic, and you just don't seem to accept that. So I'm just trying to go into like sub points. Yeah, I'm just throwing as many points as I can.
I don't think you have to completely cover your body, because it's about it's like pattern recognition, right? Like if there's a few patches that stick out.
As an apex hunter, so it sees any sort of thermal that seems out of place, and he's like, "Wait a minute, like what's this?" Oh, it'll go to. So
yeah, but if there's let's say for hypothetically, just the butt cheeks are not covered by mud. Like the Predator making the assumption, the leap from, hey, those are butt cheeks, which means it's a human there. I'm just saying, like because there are a few parts that are uncovered of dirt. Like they wouldn't necessarily know there was a human.
The Predator memorized all of his prey's anatomy.
Yeah, it's the Predator.
He knows the anatomy of human beings. He knows that Arnold's cheeked up.
Yeah. I only have one real question about this entire topic. I don't. Who's here has seen the new Predator movie called Prey?
I have not yet.
I have not. No one. No, so I just want to know, in that new Prey movie, does anybody muddy themselves up?
These are the important questions. Honestly, has the science disproven this? And thus, since they've not done it again. Yeah.
If not, then look, that's the answer you have. Also, what is it with them just taking it backwards? Like, what's next? We're gonna caveman times. It's caveman versus predators now. We're just you
can't really go. I guess you could go into the future theoretically, but like at the same time, there's only so many settings, right? Like There's only so many settings you can put.
We're gonna do a Civil War setting. We're just gonna do all the historical settings. It's gonna be Mel Gibson and the Patriot, but there's a Predator there. It's just like how many?
I think it'd be kind of badass, honestly.
I'd watch it, honestly.
Yeah, if it was Predator, like some sort of war scenario, a historical war, and he was just rolling.
He's got a sword now, just because fuck it, why not? Yeah, I'm down.
Medieval times versus Predator. Yeah, we're down. Guys, we're cooking. We're cooking. This is amazing.
Cooking.
All right. Talking about well, no, there's no transition to the LA Gladiators from here. I was about to say they were Predators, but no, they didn't qualify for the stage.
Talking about butt cheeks.
Talking about butt cheeks. Coming out of the LA Gladiators. They didn't end up making it, although they did beat the Atlanta Reign 3-0. So, I mean, you gotta give credit where credit's due. They looked really good against the Atlanta Reign.
And they beat the Paris Eternal.
And they beat the Paris Eternal. Yeah. Very, very important. Yeah, I believe we talked about that last week. Are we disappointed by the fact that LA Gladiators didn't make it? Or did they kind of like made their own bed? Like, this is your fault. We're not going to have any sympathy. Or like, are you going to be like a little bit sad that we won't have LA Gladiators at the stage playoffs?
Can I be both?
Yeah.
Is it possible to be both?
I don't know. It's up to you. You are your own mind, AVRL.
It's because yeah, I'm a little disappointed because I felt like they were on an upswing, like they were getting better, right? They were finding their groove. Space came back in. It looked like they were starting to beat teams. I'm not just talking about the Paris Eternal here, but like they're a dangerous team. Like I think it would be very dangerous to if they did end up making the tournament, they would have been a team that you have to really look out for. They would have been a low seeded team as well. Everyone would have dodged them. I feel like no one would have actually picked them. And they could really, come back with a big vengeance there. So in some ways, like the other teams, probably glad that the Gladiators have missed out because, I still think they had a lot in them. I still think they were kind of good, even though they missed out.
Yeah, I think if we had the Gladiators at this tournament, I would have more expectations for the Gladiators if they made it through compared to the London Spitfire who did make it through. Like London is a good team and they are like solid, but can you realistically see London Spitfire going all the way to the end and pushing San Francisco Shock, Dallas Fuel, all that kind of stuff? Gladiators have that potential in them. And I agree with AVRL. Like they were playing well against the Atlanta Reign. They were a completely different team. And you also need to remember, like the 4 teams that they lost to were really good teams. They really just did a hard schedule. Like, I'm not going to defend them for that of like, you're the Gladiators. You need to win at least one of those matches. But at the end of the day, they didn't. So they don't deserve to be at this LAN at 2-4. Yep. It's disappointing because it's kind of like entertainment thieves in a way, because like they can't even defend their title at LAN. But, it is what it is. They made their bed. They got to sit in it and they need to learn from it.
Sit in the bed. Yep.
Yeah. Sit in it. They got to sit in it.
Inside the bed. Sit in it.
What do you guys do in your bed?
You lay down on it.
Lay down, yes.
Lay down in the bed. I use it like a chair. I invite everyone in. I don't have a couch. I just have a bed in the middle of my living room. Everyone sits down on the bed. Yeah, I mean, that's all there is to it, right? They had to win literally all they had to win one match. And they would have been, Honestly, in a way, though, I'm happy, though, because even though I'm glad we're clearly going to, I think they were going to have a good performance if they made it to the LAN event, considering their current trajectory. I'm glad we get to see some other teams at the event, teams that like it doesn't mean that like, obviously I'm not the opinion that like the best team shouldn't be there, because probably Gladiators was better than Mayhem or London, going into this event. But at the same time, it's nice that they get to go. So I think it's still a win in a way. It's a win in terms of diversity of seeing teams, but it's definitely a loss in terms of seeing the best teams at the event, because I think Gladiators are probably better than those bottom 2 teams that made it in. So
yeah, I feel like it goes both ways, right? You have, on the one hand, all the LA Gladiators fans. They're kind of lost now. They're like, I don't know who to root for. I don't know, like, I can't support my team at the tournament.
Yeah, won't be shocked. I'll tell you that
won't be shocked. But at the same time, you have the fan bases of all the other teams going like, this is our chance to win. And they're way more emotionally invested into the tournament. So it's a bit hit and miss. So how strong do we think the LA Gladiators were in the end then? Do we think that if they actually qualified for the stage playoffs, that they would be like a top 4 team? Or perhaps one of like the lower bracket teams?
I think they'd be... I have some crazy copium.
They did beat Atlanta Reign 3-0.
I have some crazy copium. I think they would have potentially hit top 4, because I think they were on the upswing. They were on the rise. If you look at their stocks, they were like going up, right? And I also think when you look at the schedule, you guys can throw in an opinion here if you think I'm wrong, but like in my opinion, Glad's probably had the most difficult strength of schedule for this tournament qualifier. Right? I mean, you look across the teams, like I don't know if I can name a team that had a more difficult strength of schedule. Like, and to be fair, Glads should have been, you know, based on their wins in two stages in a row now, they should have been one of the favorites coming on through. And, you know, strength of schedule for them shouldn't matter as much because if you're the best team, then who cares, right? You are the team to beat. Everyone should be afraid of you. But I don't know, like there's a couple ways you can look at it. It's like they played the two best teams in Dallas and Shock. And out of Houston and Toronto, they just needed to not lose to one of those. And Houston had a really weird qualification pathway anyway because they lost to New York, and Toronto themselves are looking good for this tournament. So like I don't hate that they lost those teams. They just needed to beat one of those two teams.
Yeah, I would put Gladiators on the same level of what I have the Houston Outlaws heading into this land of like I don't think they have the same level of like team coordination and understanding of this meta as your San Francisco Shocks and Dallases, but they have so many good players and they've shown really good matches that they could really pull out anything at the LAN. And, you know, Gladiators, they showed that against Atlanta Reign. Atlanta Reign were also not a struggling team by that point. But as Overall said, they had hard matches and they went to 5 with Dallas. They went to 5 with Houston. They had that one the only bad loss that I think they had was against Toronto Defiant. And even then, that was just like a couple of like pretty bad fumbles. Like they full held, like we forget that they full held Toronto Defiant on that Dorado, and then they just got counterfucked by all their ultimates, and then got full held. So it's like Gladiators were very close to winning a bunch of those matches. So they're not that far off. And I think if any other team had the schedule that the Gladiators have had, they probably would have gone like 1-5, unless you're like one of the big two.
Yeah, it kind of sucks as well because Toronto Defiant were playing some of the best Overwatch they played. And then Toronto Defiant also like they lose to the London Spitfire this past week, which just shows like how sort of like variable their performances are, I suppose. So LA Gladiators hit them at the very like wrong time when Toronto Defiant were at their peak. So one more follow-up question before we sort of put a bow on the LA Gladiators and, you know, their participation in the Summer Showdown. What do we think about the MVP chances and award chances of some of their players now? Because they're going to miss out on essentially a full stage playoffs, whereas you have like Proper on the San Francisco Shock going ham. Hanbin on the Dallas Fuel has looked immaculate this stage. And then, of course, on the APAC side of things, you have Prophet playing Brig, and it's like top 2 team in APAC. And Shanghai Dragons, of course, looking like a juggernaut. So, you know, when we think about Kevster, even Reiner for like Rookie of the Year, and Shu, who hasn't barely played this stage, is this kind of like it for their chances to win some of these awards? Because there's no Countdown Cup stage, so yeah, it's a tough scenario for these players, right?
Well, can I add in for the Reiner? I'll just talk about the Reiner situation because there's a lot of similarities I see between him and Fearless from last year. All right, like, you know, this really strong start, super good tank, kind of dominating the tank conversation next to someone like Hanbin. I got to admit, Hanbin was also in that early on. But then, like, as the year went on and the meta changes, Fearless couldn't keep up last year. And I feel like the same thing's happening to Reiner now. So, like, he's going down the Fearless pathway for me, which means it's like you start good, you're at the top, but then other players and other teams and, you know, who remain consistent in the meta. In this case, we're talking about Proper. Like, Proper's been good on all 3 metas so far. Granted, his hero's been relevant the entire time, and well, his hero pool has been relevant the entire time. But like, yeah, man, it's pretty shocking that like, and this is a comparison I'm going to make, is here's a player that isn't even in the Rookie of the Year conversation as far as I'm aware. But Kaluj, he's been good 3 stages in a row now. He hasn't been affected by any sort of meta changes, and yet Reiner just couldn't play Junker Queen. Like, Reiner's meant to be leading the Rookie of the Year conversation for tanks, but why do I feel like Kaluj has had the better year? You know?
I mean, didn't Kaluj get benched by Mikey?
All right, I'm just gonna pretend that didn't happen. I'll pretend that part didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's still an equivalent argument to be made. It's also, to me at least, when I look at the Fearless thing, I agree with you on most points, except for the fact that like the breadth of Reiner's pool was hero pool was definitely still larger than Fearless's this year. Like, it's not that Fearless didn't have a good pool of heroes that he can play, and also he's not like obviously an elite, like probably the best Winston in the league when he plays Winston at times, but Reiner's hero pool, aside from Junker Queen, is still larger than Fearless's, right?
Yes.
When he's been playing. So, like, I do think it's a slightly unfair conversation. Like, when
Fearless also didn't have to play Hanbin's heroes back then.
True.
So that's like a different comparison as well. Like
So I think it's tough to compare, but I think the overall point is right in that, like, he finds a meta where he's not going to be very good at, but it's not like there are other tanks. There are very few tanks that haven't been affected. In fact, you could argue the only tank that still has not technically had to be subbed out because he can't is Smurf. So, like I think
you're not ready for the profit. You're not ready for a profit tank. Okay, that's
the prof tank. So we'll see. But I do think Kaluja's had he's had a great year. Don't get me wrong, but he's still been benched by Mikey at points. So it's not like he hasn't also had metas where he's been not as strong.
His for me with this awards conversation, my problem is it'd be great to have these conversations and we should prop up these great rookies like Kaluj, like Reiner. They are the future of the league. They will be around for a very long time. They are the new generation coming in. But if we're being realistic, I'm just a proper simp straight up. I don't think any individual player has had the same level of impact on any team. The reason we don't talk about Kaluj for the San Francisco Shock is because Proper has just been more impactful than him. Even when Kaluj is playing well, Proper is generally having a better game. If we gave him MVP for almost every match they've played, it would be realistic in a lot of scenarios. He's been too consistent, too good, too many times. There's a reason all the coaches and the players joke around about how it's hey, Proper, go kill 5, because that's how much respect everyone in the league has for him. And it sucks that it feels like he is just dominating the conversation and taking away from it, but that doesn't mean we should stop propping other people up. But for me, I think the award is just, unless Proper just doesn't show up at all for Toronto and just absolutely just disappears in the server. I think it's hard to take it away from him.
Even if that happens, I think Proper gets it, which is crazy because him not showing up for one tournament doesn't delete the rest of his season in a way.
No, so I'm saying I'm not saying he doesn't play. I'm saying he actually plays and is just absolutely god awful. Because I think that is the major thing that I hold against the Gladiators and the Seoul Dynasty players. Of they are really good players. They've just the Gladiators didn't show up this stage. They didn't play to the level that they needed to play with. Primarily Reiner as well in his conversation. And then Seoul Dynasty, it's hard to give MVP or Rookie of the Year to a Seoul Dynasty player when the one international event that we had that we are going to determine, who should get these awards, they literally went out first round in a situation where they should have been at the end. So that's why I hold it against them a little bit, and that's why I think Proper is my front runner, even though they haven't even won a tournament.
I mean, yeah, I feel like there's a lot to unpack there because there's a lot of different opinions. I mean, going back to the original topic, it sounds like to a lot of people here, it's just this is the nail in the coffin for the LA Gladiators players because it's going to be very hard to justify any of them winning any award after missing out on the entire stage playoffs. I do want to say, though, that if Seoul Dynasty ends up winning the Summer Showdown and, Profit is amazing on the Brig, I do feel there's, at least in the conversation there with Proper, because I think at the same time, I get what you're saying with this international tournament, but I'd say that the 3 stages so far has had pretty varying meta so far. In stage 1 in the kickoff clash, we saw a lot of Zarya, primarily from Dallas Fuel, etc., and that was enabled teams to be good. Stage 3 now, it's a Junker Queen meta that's completely different from the mid-season Madness meta as well. So if you're Seoul Dynasty, yeah, it's super disappointing that they bombed down to that international LAN, but that was one meta, whereas we've had 3 different ones this year. I completely agree that a regional tournament, of course, does not have the same value as an international one, but I do think that at least Profit is probably the one candidate right now that is at least competing with Proper. And I'm not willing to take out, in advance that San Francisco Shock are going to be a top 2, top 3 team at this tournament, because we saw what happened in the kickoff clash as well. They had a pretty shaky series against the Washington Justice, and then they went out, I think top 4, I think something like that. So I'm not going to take out in advance that the Shock are going to be amazing this tournament, and if they aren't amazing, if they go at 4th, maybe worst case scenario 5th again, and meanwhile the Seoul Dynasty win it again, I think Profit is very much in that conversation still. So there's a lot of varying kind of circumstances here.
Before you push us on, Johnny, if you're going to go under that, guys, then should we be talking more about Hanbin? Because Hanbin really has been insane when he has played in the kickoff clash and this tournament. He has been head and shoulders the best in his role. For that Zarya composition, dragged Dallas Fuel kicking and screaming. And I think he's pretty undoubtedly right now one of the best Junker Queens in the league. So it's if we're willing to give people a pass for a certain meta, for a situation of being benched, I think Hanbin needs to be talked about more as well.
I think he should be in there. If you get second at kickoff clash and then you win the Summer Showdown, if they're the best team with this thing. I mean, in the mid-season Madness even, they tried to implement Fearless and stuff, and it obviously wasn't working with the Lucio Moira compositions. That's not necessarily Hanbin's fault. So It's a very complicated conversation, but I think it's one worth having and lots of different perspectives to have on it.
I still don't see how Gladiators get discounted entirely though from this if they've won 2 stages. We're talking about meta differentials, and Glad still have won 2 stages, right? So we're like, well, Dynasty, they haven't won anything, but they've been pretty good. But then we have Glad to have won 2 stages back to back, and then sure, they weren't great this stage.
No, yeah, sure, but I think I'm basing this off Seoul Dynasty winning Kickoff Clash and the Summer Showdown.
It means Glads and Seoul and the Dallas guys are all in the same kind of category.
Yeah.
And the only outlier is like, well, Shock have been kind of good the entire way through, right? Prop has been good the entire way through. So like he just kind of soars ahead while everyone else has not been good for one stage or whatever, whereas Prop has just been pounding all 3.
Yeah, personally, I just think we shouldn't discount Gladiators players at all yet because they've won 2 stages and there's still a whole nother stage to go after Summer Showdown. Like, I think it's just like kind of foolish to discount. I'm totally understandable if Proper is the front runner for people, and I think that's fair because he's like high up in my mind too. But I just can't write off Glad's players yet when they've won 2 stages. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
It just seems very unfair to them to be like this one stage will define them, but other teams were looking for like excuses to potentially fit them in why this stage didn't define them. So,
well, for me, I think so many fans as well take it like so harshly when we're like, Kevsa, no, they lost in the Countdown Cup. He's dead to me. Like, that's not what we're really talking. We're talking about like very fine margins of like greatness. Like, these players are all absolutely fucking incredible at what they do. And you got to really find those little things that have made these other players better. So it's like, I completely agree with you. Like, Kevsa, in my opinion, is close to being the runner-up, even with this stage, just because of how dominant he's fucking been on that team and how flexible he's been. So, yeah, I think it's easy to look over the fact that like we're sort of talking down to some of these players, but it's not really. Yeah.
It's a hard year. It's a really hard year to pick. Like, there's so many great players, and then up until this stage as well, Spark, like you had like Alpha Yi and stuff in the conversation, that's fell off the cliff now. So
Johnny, everyone's allowed one bad stage. We said
that's true. Technically, if we base them off this stage, they are allowed a bad stage. So they could
are allowed a bad stage. They are allowed a bad stage. That has nothing to do with me going on Plat chat and making a bet with Avast that they were going to be number 1 at the end of the stage.
Yeah, I know, Johnny. Remember that comment earlier about the best minds at Overwatch plus me? Maybe we should reverse.
Yeah, this is why I'm not an analyst on the show anymore. I'm just a host and a producer. I'm regressing. You had something to say, Avril?
Yeah, I don't know about anyone else, but I think for me, I don't know, when does the voting actually happen? I can't remember, but
end of the regular season, I'm pretty sure. It does not include the playoffs.
Well, last year it came, the voting was available before the end of Countdown Cup. And I remember I specifically refrained from submitting a ballot until after Countdown Cup, just so I could see everything. So I don't know when it will come through this year, but the criteria for me will end up being, at the very moment I receive the ballot and I'm willing to submit it, what has all the candidates, what have they done throughout the entire year? And I'll look at everything at that point. So, guys, we talk about front runners now, but like, when we get to the end, then you get to contextualize. Well, Glads, was it just the one bad stage? Do they bounce back in the Countdown Cup? What does that all kind of look like? So I think there's still plenty of time for front runner and for different candidates to make the case.
Yeah. A lot still to figure out, and I think after this weekend we'll know a lot more in that regard. So quickly, once more before we get to the stage playoffs itself, I do want to quickly mention the Atlanta Reign. We kind of talked about them already tangentially with the LA Gladiators, but they did get 3-0'd by the LA Gladiators, while they pretty much they were in their own hands, or their fate in the playoffs were in their own hands, right? If they had just beaten the LA Gladiators, they would have made it, right? So instead, they get 3-0'd, completely annihilated by the LA Gladiators. Are we disappointed in the look from Atlanta Reign, or do we kind of like, it's the LA Gladiators, tough luck?
I'm probably disappointed by the scoreline. I mean, this is a pretty hyped up match in terms of Kai should still be really, really good coming into this game. Everyone's saying Hawk should be the best jungle queen in this particular matchup. And I don't know, man. Like, I feel like Reign should have been good enough to take a map here. I think I was also maybe not as happy to see as much Ashe being played by Kai when his Sojin is right at the top. And personally, for me, I still think Ashe is a bit of a trap hero. Like, she's a bit overrated in this meta, in my opinion. So I don't know.
That's interesting because I'm actually warming up to the Ashe as time goes on.
Yeah,
like,
You all down it. God damn. Every day. I just can't believe how much disrespect I got for talking about Ash, and everyone was shit on me the whole time. Now everyone's like, oh, Ash, pretty good. I literally was laid it out for you fools. In the beginning, I laid it out, and you guys are now warming up to the Ash.
Slow the roll. I didn't say it was better. I think there is.
But the point is, you've been warming up to the Ash, right?
Like Hollywood's second point, I think is a great Ash map, right? If you're able to just sit back, be able to keep the distance, get the dynamites if the team moves together, like it has its moments. And I think the teams that are varying it up and like putting it in from time to time have shown some strength there. But I don't know which one's better than the other. Like, I
will also say it's completely dependent on like what team you're playing and the style. I think both are easy to counter, and I think the best example of this was the Philadelphia Fusion versus Seoul Dynasty series this past week. I think like Seoul Dynasty, they decided to play a lot of Ash, especially like here in Hollywood. But I think Fusion did a fantastic job in like avoiding the angles and diving on top of fits on that Ash. So there's definitely ways to counter it. I don't think there's one over the other.
It's super map dependent. It is extremely map dependent, in my opinion. And that's the number one factor for when I see Ash being played at all. It's when I see teams kind of forcing her, even on the, in my opinion, not good Ash maps, that I'm like, okay, what are you doing? Like, this is just subpar now. I just think you need a lot of burst damage in this meta to get through double AoE plus green HP on cooldown, rally on cooldown, commanding shout, right? Without the burst damage of the rail headshot, like, Ash, cool, you're going to tickle them for a little bit. Dynamite will tickle you, it's fine. It's good AoE, but how do you kill anybody, right? It's just not as consistent, in my opinion.
Yeah, Sojin has some real pick potential. Like, did you see that London game where Sparker just decided that they were going to win against Toronto on that second round?
Can't do that.
Yeah, that's the value of the Sojin compared to the Ash. The Ash does more damage and is more reliable in terms of getting you like teamfight wins over time, but Sojin can just win you fights and maps with just some ridiculous like Sojin play, but it's just more of a gamble.
Yeah. I also think that teams have done a really good job in like playing the angles, and I think Nono Spitfire is a great example of that, of like how to be disciplined when your opponent has overclock, or like how to play the angles to not take these rail shots. Like at the start of the stage, some fucking Lucios were just like wall riding and just like, you know, challenging the Sojourn. And now we're actually at the point where like teams are very much respecting the railgun and playing the angles appropriately. So I think Sojourn, I still think is the preferred pick because of the railgun, but with teams avoiding building that railgun, or like teams avoiding the railgun primary fire, or whatever you want to call it, to prevent the railgun from building up. I think that is the biggest kind of factor right now, that it's so hard to build a railgun on some maps.
Well, we kind of diverged from the Atlanta Rain topic, but I'm going to say that...
it's a sidebar.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I was very unimpressed with Rain's performance in this. I think Speedly is kind of he's been really good in his debut, but this was a match where he got punished a lot, I think, for aggression. Glads were really, really good at punishing him for like going for those aggressive dashes, looking for that extra damage when he was building blades in the neutral so fast before. And it was clearly something they knew that like, okay, we can punish him a lot for this. I also think even though Kai has had, he's been pretty solid, I don't think Kai has been the most standout hitscan player.
I agree, yeah.
Which has hurt them a bit. Because honestly, I think the rest of the Rain core with like Hawk, Vigilante, and OG has been very, very consistent as they've gone on throughout the stage, as they've continued to get better and better. But I just haven't seen that same level of consistency from Kai at points. So it's just like, I don't know. Rain definitely just fell below my expectations comparatively, where I feel like they've always been kind of a slow team, like slow to start, and they get better throughout the stage. Like it's happened every stage for a long time now. And it's just unfortunate that they could not put up any maps here at all, because I feel like it just puts way too much doubt on Rain, when I feel like they're a way better team than that. But it's hard to rate them after they get like crushed in such a manner.
I'm just kind of happy that they finally got punished for being average in the regular season. You know, like as much as that sounds like petty, like it's like they always go like 3-3 and they barely scrape by, and then they're like, okay, time to actually try in a way, right? Like I feel like that sort of happened coming into this stage. They just sort of started way too slow, and then we're like, well, are they just going to use their talent to get over the line at the end? You know, they just didn't get there this time. So it'll suck in the same way that it's like the Gladiators they probably would have been a better team on land than a couple of the other teams that qualified, but it's cool to be able to see some of these teams get a shot at it, right? Like Vancouver Titans, their first land. I'm interested to see how they're going to do, and all the new pieces they have. So It is what it is.
I'm really curious about the Speedily Nero situation, because Speedily only came in partway through the stage. So how do you handle scrimming with that? Because it's like we've all heard the sort of scenarios between the teams. The coach is saying like, oh, can't play ranked. It's hard to integrate other players. Stick to one tank because you can't juggle two tanks with scrim time. So how do you juggle the two Genji players? So did Atlanta play Nero and scrims early on and then only integrate a Speedily later, which means both players kind of halve scrims? Or here's a wild take, wild thought rather, did maybe Speedily play scrims the entire way through and Nero didn't actually get the scrim, but he had to play the matches anyway? So it's like a weird situation for the Atlanta while they're trying to transition a player.
About it, by the way, Avril. I think he tweeted about it that he had essentially going into his debut match, he'd had like 3 days of practice total.
Yeah.
Right. So that can be pretty rough.
He had not been playing. He had not been playing like at all. It had been Nero. So like it was coming in last minute for him joining the stage and the roster in terms of like actual play time.
When did Vigilante join? That was pretty recent in this stage as well, right?
So it's like two
very
matches
recent.
It's like kind of integrating two new players. It is a bit rough, in some cases. I'm trying to make a couple excuses for them. I don't know. Just seeing like if there's a bit of copium there for Atlanta.
I mean, there could be. I mean, you can't deny there is like some sort of things there. I just think when you look at how strong Rain was performing with these new integrations, and it kind of just falls over on like an individual performance / coordination level on their match versus the Glads when they've had the most time to perform. Like, obviously, it's not impossible because rosters can just like, especially newly formed ones, can just like explode randomly in a high pressure match or like when stuff doesn't go their way. But I just don't think that like that argument would have held a lot more weight cope wise / hope wise if it was like in the beginning of the stage versus the end, for me at least. But I do think that it's like not out of the realm of possibility because Glads have slotted in Happy as well. Pretty and Space. So technically like it's hard to like kind of just like newish rosters in terms of like how they're running them across for both squads there. So
I'll also provide this might be a bit cope too, but I'll also provide a different perspective of that. Like it feels like obviously you want to win every stage and so, but I think with the acquisition of Vigilante, who's a rookie, you got Ultraviolet, OG, you have Speedily who just turned 18 as well. Like implementing or like integrating Vigilante and Speedily and missing out on a stage, maybe the teamwork wasn't quite there. It's not the end of the world for this franchise. They have one of the most talented like rosters in the entire league for like the next 2 to 3 years to come. Like these guys are 18, like they just got eligible for the league, and it's some of the most talented rookies in the entire league. So while you're the LA Gladiators are like, hey, we need Happy, we need to bolster our hit scan so we can actually win the league this season. I almost feel like a bit of calmness from the Atlanta Reign in knowing that they have such a talented core, or they're going to be like probably sticking around for a long time now, that you miss out on a stage. So what? You made top 3 6 consecutive ones. You missed this one. You aim for the playoffs instead. No big deal.
I think some of their players might be on 1+0s, but don't quote me on that. But
all right. Well, I think G and Brad would be it would not be like him to just like we're not gonna renew that. Sorry, dude. Yeah.
Oh, you can renew, but then the player has a choice. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I don't have that insight, so I can't argue with
thought
you.
Experiment.
I'm taking your word for this, Avril. So it's hard to.
No, don't quote me. I'm just.
Okay. All right. Just say it on the podcast, but act like I never had it.
Just grapevine stuff. I don't know.
Okay. Grapevine, through the grapevine. All right. There's the Atlanta Reign for you. Moving on along, let's talk about the Florida Mayhem for a little bit. They obviously qualify. They take the last 8th spot to make it to the tournament after beating the Paris Eternal and also beating the New York Excelsior in the very final match of the qualifier tournament. Bit of a meme team, people say. The double flex support, some Pharah gameplay here and there. What do we make of it? Do they actually have a chance with these funny compositions, or did it just like, hey, they played New York, Paris, let's not make too big of a fuss about it? And then also after that, we can talk about the fact that Majed, they announced, it will not be able to be traveling to the Toronto.
I think the flex support, I think it's entirely irrelevant for everyone that doesn't know, Majed, they just announced Majed can't make it to Toronto potentially. They're working to resolve it, but if that's the case, it doesn't even matter what the double flex support option is because they won't play it. in Summer Showdown without Majed. Then they'll play Onimo, who has not been playing, who's been benched for Majed, even on Lucio. So it's potentially a moot point, but I will say the double flex support can work if the flex supports play perfectly. And that's kind of like the nature of the beast. Is like, but that's one of those comps where there's a reason teams don't play it. And it's because like if you have to play it perfectly every time, then it's not a very easily replicatable, like successful comp. It's just something that works comfort-wise. Like I said this story on my stream a lot, and Gumba himself talked about it, I think, in the interview, but like I'll walk past Gumba in the office days. And I'm like, hey, Gumba, look how Scrim's going. He's like, oh, we're shit, and I'll walk away. And like, and I'll just, the thing for them is that he'll just like, because Gumba just recognizes, because part of the reason what makes him a good coach is that he sees the weaknesses in a roster pretty quickly, I think. And when they scrim and they're like, this isn't working, we need to make adjustments. It's the age-old problem of like, do you try to force the meta where it makes sense, or do you try to adjust to something that can work better for you? And the thing for Mayhem is they've determined that it is just better for them to potentially play double flex support, I think, because the rest of their players are perfectly comfortable, I think, playing meta. It's just they don't feel as good playing Lucio Brigida all the time with this squad. So it's just, and I think they play around it well. So I mean, if Majed makes it to Toronto, I think they can take maps off teams. I don't predict them being able to win against any top squads though with this comp. So.
Yeah. I agree. Like to like everything you said. Like I've worked with Gumbo like in 2018. Like he's a very realistic person. We were Team Australia going up against Team South Korea in 2018. Going into the GOATS meta, and we're like, that's when I played Torp for us, because like at some point you need to realize that it's like you're not gonna win straight up. He understands the limitations of his roster. He said it in the interview of like, we're really just going to go on holiday, because it's like they understand that they're not saying they're not going to try, but you need to be realistic with like what you can accomplish, and going out playing your strengths. Like, and Summer Jet and RuPaul, they've had some moments of playing perfectly and just going absolutely crazy on that Zenyatta Ana, but it does just get punished by the higher end teams, as you said. Like we saw the proper Violet hit squad that just like single-handedly dismantled this Florida Mayhem composition. So I think it'll be cool to see these guys. It's disappointing if Majed can't make it out, because I think that's just gonna, if anything, make it even worse than it already was.
Yeah, I mean,
was.
it's just doomed. Then, unless Onimo has like a life game. Though I will admit also, with the addition of Hydron recently benching Xe, if Hydron, because Checkmate's been putting up consistently good Genji performances, if Hydron shows up and performs at the level he has recently, then there's some real hope, honestly, they can still punch above their weight, which has kind of been the crux of the issue for Mayhem for, I think, a lot of the year, is that they just haven't had the same DPS firepower for large portions of the year. And like when they show up, there's like, okay, like there's a real game going on here. Like there's a real shot for something to happen. So who knows? Honestly, they're kind of I think they're by far the most wild card of like, they can show up and potentially have some really good matches, or they can just turbo shit the bed. So,
since we're on the topic of realism, I think like a realistic outcome for the Mayhem that they can be happy with is if they don't get eliminated first. So like if they can make it to lower bracket round 2, or if they can even upset Houston, like just anything like that. Because I think they're probably, in my mind, maybe like bottom 2 in this tournament bracket with the 8 teams, right? I think that's a realistic view to have, especially if Majed can't play. So if they can sort of get out of that and like, be more like 5th, 6th, that'd already be like an accomplishment.
Yeah, we will talk more about the bracket later, because we'll make one. But in the lower bracket, they are potentially facing the Vancouver Titans. So,
which I would say is winnable if they had Summer Jed. But I like the fact that if they're gonna have to play Onimo and like forced to play this like Lucio Brig meta everywhere, like I'm a little worried that. And I think Avast is right. It's gonna come down to Hydron. And I think at that point, if Hydron can outpace Spire, then that's their win condition. But
that's a tough call.
Yeah, it's like good luck. I'm looking at the Reddit stats right now, and Aspire is statistically one of the best surgeons we have in the league. So
they did lose to Boston Uprising.
That's true. But Seeker also was on a fucking bender on that one as well.
Oh, dude, what a debut performance. Sorry, Arnold, go ahead.
I want to say one thing about the Gumber interview, which, by the way, was a great interview. Like, I think it was amazing.
Great job, Custa.
Amazing when the head coaches come on.
If only his mic didn't suck balls, but yeah.
I was going to say, like, he sounded like he was.
He was very aware of that.
Yeah.
He's doing the interview from the beach. No, one thing he said in the interview was quite interesting. Was like he's saying like, oh, like maybe Dallas won't prepare for us because we're like a cheesy wildcard team. I mean, he didn't use the word cheesy, but like Jake did. And I'm like, I don't know that you need to do much preparation. Like when you look at their team, it's like the double flexible. It's like, do you need to prepare for that? It's like they're just playing a worse version of everyone else's Jungle Goats meta comp. Like it's just worse than the normal comp. So like, what extra prep do you need to do for that? Like I don't know if I buy the whole prep thing.
With that, AVRL, I will say, just a note on that is that they don't play the double flex support as traditionally as a lot of people would expect, because a lot of times they kind of let Majed just donk walk around the map and look for kills. And it's like absolutely bonkers. Like it's kind of dumb because you're like, this shouldn't work. But sometimes Majed's mechanics are just so 8-tier strong that like they just work. So like that is the only difference, is that like when is Majed going to pop out of the corners? Which is like sometimes when you might have to prep about like how do they set up Majed to take this
He's going Jonak mode. All right.
I think besides that, you're like totally right, because like what other prep do you need to do?
Yeah, I think Dallas will be fine, quite honestly. Well, I mean, they want to be played Dallas, so I don't even know why I said that. But if you're prepping and you're not overthinking it, I don't know if you guys ever experienced this playing like Custa or something, but like one of the worst things you can do is actually over prep for a match and just like overthink it. And it's just like, oh, if they play this composition, we gotta swap over to this composition and we gotta play this way. And suddenly you're not playing optimally anymore because you're overthinking instead of actually playing the game. So yeah,
you're better off going down playing what you play, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. As soon as you start like altering and iterating on your own comp to try and deal with someone else's, like especially when you have something as hard meta as Young Queen Goats, like you just lose. Like I remember that happened to us in, it was like stage 2 Goats or something like that when we were on the Valiant or something like that. We played against Shock. We tried to play Sombra Goats, didn't work. We tried to play Warrior Goats, didn't work. I'm like, well, guys, back it up. We're going home because like we have nothing else in the tank. Like we're just not going to beat them.
I just think like if I'm Rush and I'm on Dallas, I'm just like, oh, okay, we'll just play our normal thing. Nothing's going to change. We just if Dallas just play the normal game, they probably just win. You don't have to double flex support. All right, you do that. That's fine with me. You know, I just don't, hypothetically in that Dallas Mayhem matchup, I just don't think Rush changes anything.
No, there's no way that he even, I mean, like prep is definitely one of the most misunderstood parts, I think, of like esports / in general, honestly, for how teams approach games, but especially, and also in Overwatch, because even though we have the breadth of compositions and like choices at times, besides all the times we've been locked in one meta, like the reality is teams, throughout all my professional experience and like interacting with teams since retiring, teams just don't prep that hard for individual opponents. They just prefer to refine their own game, is more often like how it goes. So like prep is oftentimes like used an excuse, like they were prepping for this team. I'm like, I can assure you 90% of the time they were not prepping for this team.
Sometimes people are like, oh, they were sandbagging their strats so they don't show them to this thing. It's like, guys, they don't think that like level of deep. Like Overwatch doesn't play like that. It's not like a Valorant where it's like you're giving away your playbook. Like Overwatch doesn't play in that kind of way. It's more about refining these compositions, especially when you have hard metas like this.
Yeah, so I remember like early on in my career, it was like either you play a soldier composition and sit back a little bit, or you play a Genji dive composition, or you play aggressive, sort of in tune with like Soldier and Ashe. So like that's about the limit of like composition expression that teams will go, I think, is really, do we want to play a bit more passive with an Ashe, or do we want to play a bit more aggressive with a Soldier? And I think that's pretty much to the extent you'll see some of these teams adapt, especially in this tournament. So yeah, we'll see how the Houston Outlaws deal with them. It would be funny as fuck though if they came out with some dumb composition because they were overthinking how to beat the Florida Mayhem. But you know, I'm not going to count it out. That'd be absolutely hilarious. Before we move on to our next team, I do want to shout out that guy who donated $20 to the channel and said,
of that guy.
For the record, I don't know if anyone has brought this up yet. The Mythbusters tested to see if mud prevents thermal imaging. The answer was a resounding no.
Boom. Well, roasted.
There we go. Now we have empirical evidence, okay? Before it was nonsense talk, but now we have empirical evidence. The mud does not work. So now we know.
Thank you very much for that, that guy. Now we have the answer. We can stop discussing Arnold on this podcast for quite some time.
We can move on to the next.
He has a lot of good movies, to be fair. So maybe we'll move on to another movie. For our next conversation, two titans, or not quite titans, but two juggernauts of teams went head-to-head in both regions, both in APAC. But let's kick things off with the West first. Dallas Fuel, they took on the San Francisco Shock for the top seed going into the stage playoffs. And Dallas Fuel 3-1 the San Francisco Shock. What are our big takeaways from this one? Dallas Fuel, obviously They broke the San Francisco Shock regular season win streak record as well. So tons of motivation there. The players rejoiced. Shock were a bit boomed towards the end. Was this indicative of their performance going into the playoffs, you think? Or are the Shock very much on par with the Dallas Fuel going into it?
I think it could go either way, depending on the day. Like, I don't think this was as much as Dallas were definitely the better team, it really comes down to, can Edison put these level of performances up again? Like, and consistently. Edison was very good in this match. He definitely diffed Kilo. He just put out so much work, a lot of first picks. If he can keep playing like that, I think the Shock will struggle. But I think that it's a lot of the little things going back and forth against these two teams. It really comes down to who's going to show up on LAN more than like individual stylistic differences, all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's that deep. Like, just like we were talking about, like individual strats, all this kind of stuff. I think it really just came down to individual performances at the end of the day, because they both understand this composition very well. They're both very comfortable in it. So I don't think it's that deep.
Yeah. I mean, the Ashe was real good here, to be honest. Like, that, because I actually do think there was one key strategic difference, and it was based around the Ashe for the majority of the series. And it's not just because Edison had a lights out fucking game. It's because they use the Ashe a lot to split the Shock DPS, like a lot. Like, they would focus damage on one person, we split, and then they're like, okay, Sparkle, it's time to go fucking lay your dick on the table and take out the other DPS, like, because he's split from they can't help. He's used the dash. Like, there was a lot of options where I think they would poke one of the two DPS and then have Sparkle follow up. I also think that the Dallas Fuel backline, on top of individual performance, I think they kind of diffed the Shock backline here pretty significantly, with how, like, we've seen how it's so impactful it is for Lucios and Brigidas to hit flails and boops to deny rampages or deny ults or just to disengage from blades. And they kind of like rolled and smoked a lot of the ults for the Shock in this series with Chio and Fielder. So, but I think overall, like, that's minuscule in the grand scheme of things of what Custa was saying, was like the Fuel just simply played so good and played like way better at an individual level than the Shock did today. But I do think the Ashe, like the way that they used the Ashe was really significant in terms of like splitting up picks for Sparkle to go chase down. So
this is where I'm going to respond to the Ashe, because I was going to bring up the Ashe as well, but maybe in the opposite direction. Like, if for what it's worth, I think the Ashe is good. I think the Ashe here was obviously Edison. You fucking get it, right? Edison was amazing in the series. Can't take that away from him. My issue is, like, I don't think you can rely on the Ashe for this tournament, because when you look at the map series, what do we play? Ilios, Paraíso, Dorado into New Queen Street. And funny enough, New Queen Street ended up being the map that didn't play any Ashe, even though, like, I think that Ashe is reasonable there. My point is, the entire series was all good Ashe maps. That's why you get away with it. Edison can play the Ashe because they're all good Ashe maps. Paraíso, Dorado, I think the two biggest Ashe maps in the entire map pool. So unless Dallas can just guarantee those maps all the time, which you're not going to get when you have map choice selection, like, you're going to be forced to play some Edison Sojourn eventually. And that needs to be as good as the other Sojourns, if not better, to, you know, make sure that Dallas can actually get to the end, maybe win the title. I still have my doubts that you can actually force the Ashe the entire way through. I think that would be a mistake. I think Edison did play an insanely good Ashe and did diff Kilo, but like, you just can't do that every single time.
Do you think Kilo prefers the Sojourn though? Like, I think so. Oh, really? I thought Kilo preferred the Ashe as well. Like, I thought the Shock, maybe it's just like the maps I've watched and I've seen him playing more Ashe, but I mean,
going back in the regular season, Kilo has historically played the Ashe. So I think that's why you kind of feel that way, but I don't have an answer for you.
Has Kilo played more Ashe or more Sojourn this stage and season? I haven't seen all the games.
I
feel like it has to be Sojourn, but it's like he's put a lot of time in the Ashe.
Even the teams that favor Ashe, I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me on this, I'm pretty sure that even like the teams that prefers Ashe still play majority Sojourn.
Can I say this? And I think Proper prefers it when Kilo plays Sojourn, because when you have a team, like, the Sojourn enables your team to go a little bit more, you know, donk walk, and just like you can just like actually run into the other team. You can play fast, right? You're not a passive team. The other thing the Ashe really does to support the Genji, and you'll notice this from Lip's gameplay, is a lot of the value of the Sojourn is not that you can just one-shot somebody, but you can set up the kills for the Genji. Because even if you don't get the headshot, you get the body shot on the rail. That's when the Genji just shifts in, gets the kill, shifts out. Like, you see a lot of that. So when you so when you want to really enable a guy like Proper, I think Sojourn pairs better with Proper's Genji or just any good Genji.
Yeah, sorry, I have the numbers here. Kilo played 70 minutes of Ashe. Edison played 80 minutes of Ashe. So they're around the same place, and that's like middle of the pack, while Hisu played 217 minutes of Ashe. Hisu's been going crazy, but yeah, it seems like they both played just for this stage, weeks 15 through 18.
I still don't have the stats yet. There's a rip.
It's on Reddit. The Sojourn Ashe Junker Queen stats.
Oh, do you have the Sojourn stats too then? Like, how did the Sojourn compare to the Ashe numbers?
They don't tell you how long they played Sojourn for. They only show you how long they played Ashe for. So you got to kind of like iterate off of it. But Kilo's Sojourn stats, his damage is quite low. I guess you can go on Reddit and put it up, and that might help. But
I'm too lazy.
Okay, Kilo's honestly, their Sojourn stats are very similar. Between Edison and Kilo, considering that they're both on top teams and stuff like that. Edison dies a lot though.
It's actually such a weird meta. Like, I'm not trying to dismiss that or anyone who actually like reads into the stats, but I feel because of the stylistic differences, the stylistic differences is actually like more important than the stats themselves. Like, to an extent, of course, you're going to see a big difference when like, you know, it's Merit popping off or Kilo popping off. But for the most part, I actually do think that there is so much like stylistic difference in like how aggressive you want to play as a team, or like what angles you want to take as a team, that they don't fully like justify whether someone is better than the other. You know, because I do think the teams have different tempo in this meta. I think that's the best way to describe it. Like, are they willing to sit back and take less fights, or do they always want to like push spawn doors all the time, and like, you know, you get more stats that way. So you know, I I'll tell the audience to be careful to not just like assume that just because someone's number one in stats, they're not the best hit scan player around. So take it with a grain of salt, is what I'd say. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but
Absolutely.
I do think that there's a surprising amount of difference in approach to teams wanting to take fights at different points in the map and how fast they want to take fights, etc. But yeah, any final points on Dallas Fuel against the Shock? I think we're all excited to see a potential rematch in the tournament itself, but it seems like the Dallas Fuel is the favorite of the two. And we'll dive into the bracket later.
These are the best two teams. These are the best two teams.
Yeah, head and shoulders.
Okay, just because I just have this like kind of like ball of first take energy inside my soul, AVRL. Would you say that they're the best two teams in the world, or do you think Shanghai Dragons have a say in it?
See, that's the thing, is like, you don't have that's the thing, man, because the problem is you look at last year, you just compared to last year, like when you had every tournament was international, who was good what tournament changed. Like APAC dominated, was it Summer Showdown, but then they kind of got wiped out in some of the other tournaments, you know. So it's like it changes per meta. So, you know, it's that's the rough thing about the mid-season madness being the only international, because like, you know, you can't get that comparison otherwise. So but I would say like Shanghai look insane. Shanghai look unlocked. Who I use, in my opinion, the best Genji in the world. Lip is just phenomenal right now. Like, Shanghai's form is so good.
For me, it's so hard to have a gauge. It's not even like how good is the Shanghai Dragons or the Seoul Dynasty. It's like how much do their opponents suck as well. Like, you know, like we have
I feel for them.
the range of teams in North America in which we can pin teams against, like when they beat them or lose them and that kind of stuff. There's only 7, so it's like maybe Valiant is like a middle of the pack team in North America, and we just don't give them enough credit because they're like, we don't have a point of reference. So it's really hard to tell, but I agree with AVRL. I think Shanghai Dragons would probably be able to compete with Shock and Dallas
I think the thing that sucks the most is just like, if you're Shanghai Dragons going into this tournament, like how do you efficiently practice to be your best? You pretty much have to play Seoul. Like, or you can't
play contenders. You
can't scream Guangzhou because that's your first matchup. So you scream like Philly, Seoul, and contenders teams.
Scream O2 Blast.
Yeah. Well, but you know, I don't want to put any disrespect towards O2 Blast, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is if you're Dallas Fuel, you can scream Houston, San Francisco Shock, even I don't know, like Gladiators probably not screaming the JOATS man anymore, but like there's just more great teams. Like you're not as limited to your practice, and I think that allows for teams like the Shock and Dallas Fuel, as we saw in the international tournament, to like really push their inefficiencies in a way that perhaps you're not allowed as good of practice partners in APAC. Again, not disrespecting those teams, but I don't know if you agree.
Well, I'll say this: like I think that's definitely more relevant from mid-season madness, because here's a dichotomy of contenders. is that Contenders, when they started playing A sides, B sides this year, their like season, quote unquote, they started on the Junker Queen meta, right? They started Junker Queen meta like full month before Overwatch League. Overwatch League was still playing, mid-season, playing the old patch. So we never had a situation where Contenders could actually scrim Overwatch League. Historically in APAC, most of the good scrim partners and good scrim diversity came from the Contenders teams. And teams like O2 Blast, Talon have always been sort of on par with the Overwatch League teams in Asia anyway, in APAC anyway. So like they were insanely good scrim partners for the APAC team. So I think now with the fact that Contenders and Overwatch League are aligned on the same Junker Queen patch, there's a lot more like crossover between the APAC teams getting to actually widen their scrim pool, and that's like really important to their practice. So that's partially why I think like things are looking better from Summer Showdown, when like things up until now were maybe a little shakier.
All right. That rhymes up nicely. From the San Francisco Shock, the Dallas Fuel, and the Shanghai Dragons, let's talk about the Boston Uprising. I just want to quickly mention them before we dive into the APAC side as well, because it was fucking funny that they came out with the Western lineup and reverse swept the Vancouver Titans. Seeker with a fantastic debut performance, Crimson and Punk back in the lineup as well. Punk's parents very happy about it on Twitter, updated the graphic. But come on now, come on, we just gotta. This is so delightful.
This was. I mean, I'm gonna be. I mean, first of all, I send a sly smile towards Custa, because like I'm sure he's. I send a sly smile here towards Custa because of the just the situation. A situation similar to this has happened across many Overwatch League rosters throughout all of time, in relation to Lori's leaving and the sudden resurgence of Western players. It's just like it's rather interesting how many times this scenario plays out in the Overwatch League to varying success. It doesn't always end in success necessarily, but in this case it has. So I find that funny. Secondly, I hope that people or not mag, but it was rather, who was Piggy was teasing a signing. Wouldn't it be funny if Piggy gets signed to Boston and gets benched by
dude, you're lucky Laurie's not still on team, because he's like, write that shit down.
Write that shit down. Yeah, I mean, well played to Boston. I mean, they played fantastically. They played great. They played great Overwatch, but also I think just as importantly is that like Seeker and Punk had incredible individual performances too. Top that, and I also felt Titans hard. All the things that were going right for them, along with some of the issues, were heavily exacerbated in this match. It felt like they didn't have any of the tempo that they had previously. It felt like they didn't have any of the setup or the initiation, like a lot of their fight setups that they'd done so well before. In addition, they ruined themselves with the May pick a couple times. Honestly, they thought they actually thought they were backbone, Pepe laugh, and like it just did not. It didn't work out, I think. That was actually
so brutal. They tried to go onto the village point like 4 times, and every time just got annihilated.
I personally felt like, this was a great performance from Boston, but overall, Titans kind of lost this series with some questionable comp choices, and just really a lot of their setups got denied pretty heavily by Boston too. So like, it was a good match, very good match.
Yeah, I think it was cool to see Punk sort of overcome everything. As you said, there is a lot of similarities between what happened to him, what happened to me. So, it's cool to see Australians prevail once more. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think Crimzo and Punk, I think, have looked to be their best pieces throughout the entirety of the year when they have played. Like, you go back to the kickoff clash, like, they were the players that were performing well, and those were the players that were getting the wins for them. And, it kind of felt like that moment of like, are they really going to sign Mag and just go fully Korean? But I don't think you'll see that happen again, especially when you add Seeker into the mix, who just went fucking crazy. But I agree with everything about said. Like, as much as we can praise Boston a lot as well, it also raised a lot of questions for me with Vancouver Titans of like, if they just don't have Aspire go kill 5 in their like wheelhouse, or maybe they just need to lean into that more of just like, our job is to give Aspire more space, because what they were doing here with the May just did not work in certain situations. So if it doesn't work against Boston, it makes you fear for what they're about to go up against in the lane.
I'm kind of glad that Vancouver were to like kind of get a wake up call. This is like a good game to get that, so they can sort of take that into the tournament. I don't feel it obviously feels bad to get a reverse sweep, but like being 2-0 up and being in a winning position is still like a silver lining for Vancouver. So I think they can have a reasonable chance of bouncing back. We'll see if that ends up happening in the tournament or not. I still have some concerns towards Boston moving forward, though. Winning here is like, it's cool, but you've lost Laurie, which is great for the Western players and maybe great for the team as well. You've lost Baroy as well, so that's 2 coaches gone. Baroy's now GM of Vancouver. And
tough first match.
that is pretty rough for Baroy in some cases.
Yeah, but it's not like Baroy is like, as the GM, I doubt. Obviously, it depends on his role. But
No. I'm just saying, if you're Baroy,
Rough emotionally.
Oh well.
Yeah, fair.
Oh well.
Yeah. But so anyway, it's like Boston now just have Ashcroft. It's like Ashcroft and Mineral and like one other manager, right? Like that's their entire staff because they've lost Huck and Laurie, Baroy, and they look like they want to be moving towards a more Western style roster. So jury's out on how that all looks with limited staff moving forward. You know, I hope for the best because I want to see Punk do well, but you know they are losing a lot of people on this team at the same time.
They'll be fine.
Yeah.
They're a professional organization.
But also, I mean, we should probably discuss, I think, as part of this of like the Laurie departure in general, like considering where Laurie's pedigree was coming out of Contenders to Boston, was any of this shown at any point during his tenure at Boston? And I would argue no.
Wait, sorry, what did you say?
Like, we're talking about staff departures, and then I go on the topic of Laurie because they announced Laurie left the team, right? Recently. So like, and they've gone this full Western direction. Like, I don't necessarily know if like the loss of this staff will necessarily change their direction heavily, just because it feels like the staff they've had were relatively ineffective. You know, like they just haven't had any. They've been kind of just ass.
I have a theory. I have a theory.
Time. Okay.
My theory. I don't think Laurie's a good mixed coach. It's clear that he wants to play. It's clear that he wants a full Korean roster. It's very obvious that's his direction. I think he's like a good coach, maybe in a full Korean team, but like there's a lot of. I'm going to speculate that there's definitely a bit of, you know, I'm not to use the word conflict, but there's definitely some struggle internally between like what the direction of the team is. The fact that you have a lot of mixed.
They've all hinted at it.
I think Laurie did well on WG. Like they literally beat O2 Blast and had Proper and Pelican on the fucking team. Like that's a big deal, right? Laurie's WGS beat O2 Blast with those 2 giants on the team back in the day. So I think Laurie like knows what he's doing, and he's kind of like proven that kind of way. But like the Boston environment and situation just didn't work out for him. I don't think he's a bad coach, but I think him and Boston don't work. Obviously.
Yeah. Just a quick note on that. I feel like it's a very contentious topic, and I do want people to like understand as well that like, yes, Laurie put himself in this position to manage like a mixed roster, but at the same time, you know, maybe put yourself in his shoes and understand that maybe he considers it suboptimal or like very difficult to be a head coach as a Korean of a mixed roster when it comes to like communicating with like Western players, and like how can you efficiently coach a team, you know, if you don't yourself maybe like, oh, I got an ad like it's a very tough job for a head coach as a Korean maybe to like manage a mixed roster, and we've seen this time and time again that like Korean coaches, and I don't blame them, sometimes struggle to properly coach a mixed roster. So yeah, Laurie put himself in that position, but I do want, you know, people to maybe understand that maybe there was like a reason that he didn't go like try to go Korean for any like dumb or immature reason or anything like that. Maybe there's also like an understandable reason that he wanted to be the best coach possible, and that's allowed him to coach the best. Obviously it didn't work out, but I'm trying to see it from both sides.
Yeah, I kind of want to hit on that because I've been a part of this situation before.
Hey, even
as well.
Moon on the LA Valiant, right?
Yeah, like I've had the idea, and like the thing that I want to reiterate to your point, Johnny, is that this doesn't, people are like, oh my god, these people hate each other or this kind of stuff. It all comes from the same seed of everyone's just trying to win. No one really dislikes anyone that heavily. People are just trying to win. And as Johnny said, for these Korean coaches, it is much easier for them to do their job, get their ideas across, help their players, promote them, all that kind of stuff. If you're doing that with people that you can communicate effectively with, right? It's much easier as a Korean head coach to impart with your wisdom if you're doing it with Korean players and fully. And then you also have, the social hierarchy of, Korean people of like in Korean culture, you heavily respect the person above you, especially if they're like older than you. And that is a big thing. That does not exist in Western culture. And that can be a form of grinding for a lot of these people. And then there's just like practice regimes, all that kind of stuff, a difference between West and Korean. So it all comes from a place of people wanting to succeed, but there definitely has been many cases that it doesn't work, and it's very difficult to do. And that's why I give so much praise to people like Krusty, who has managed to do it over multiple seasons with multiple rosters time and time again. And that's an impressive feat to do.
Yeah. I think people are too quick to just like, oh, Krusty did it, so therefore everyone else should be able to do it too. But like communication skills, like you said, like the Korean like hierarchy, being able to talk English properly. Like Krusty actually has pretty good English, but that doesn't mean that all Korean head coaches has good English. So these are variables that come into play when you discuss someone's whether they're skilled, whether they're appropriately able to coach a mixed roster. So you can't just make like blanket statements that like, oh, Krusty did it, so therefore all others are able to do it too. No, it's from coach to coach. But I do want to go back to a point you said, AVRL, as well, that you said that maybe someone like Laurie is more fit to coach an all-Korean roster instead. So there are actually a few Korean rosters in the league. So I want to pose the question then. Like, for example, do you think that Laurie would be a good fit for, and I'll give you just examples, you can bring your own example if you wish, the Washington Justice instead of Supreme, or the Toronto Defiant, who currently have Moby Dick as a head coach? Do you think that those would be good environments for Laurie? Or I'll give you a bailout that both teams qualified for the stage, are doing pretty well already. Let's not mess with anything that's kind of working already.
Also NYXL, throw that out in there.
NYXL.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a big one. That's actually a big one. I was going to say Toronto. I think Toronto fine. Also, Moby Dick's like really good. So I think they should just promote Moby.
He's been in the league since 2018 on Fusion. He's got experience.
This is like, because we, not to get into the topic of like, well, what is a hit? What is coaching? Because no one knows what coaching is. Like, here's what I quantify. I kind of take opinions from players in terms of like who players regard as a good coach, and I know that most players regard Moby Dick as a good coach. So I'm like, Toronto are probably fine. Just promote Moby. Maybe Washington could do something there. I think New York's a big one though. If I was going to choose a team, I'd probably choose New York.
Here's my counterpoint. Do we, as esports, and this just exists in all sports and that kind of stuff, do we praise experience way too much? Would it be better if you are any of those teams? How is it worth signing a coach like Laurie to a team who has, had been pretty unsuccessful over the 2 years that he was on the Boston Uprising? Or would you better off getting a good contenders coach who has shown a willingness and a grind and a drive to like be better? Like,
I mean, that was Laurie once upon a time.
Yeah, because like, and that's it. Like that, but that was 2 years ago, right? Like, there's so much time has passed. We know how much people's motivations change over those times. Like, I don't know. Like, I worry for a team like New York Excelsior, which seems to be just grabbing teams, players and coaches from teams that don't want them anymore. Mm-hmm. Is that are they going to do the same thing with Laurie and run into the same issue of, hey, maybe we grab him? It's like, oh, maybe he's not the best coach or the coach that we were looking for. So
I will say this. Some coaches are like very much fit to coach a specific kind of team in a specific place in a specific environment. And this also applies to like real sports as well. So like, for example, if you're in the Premier League, we're talking soccer here, for example, there are definitely like coaches that definitely get hired to like the bottom teams to like take them and like have them go up another level. But that's very different from like joining an established like really good team and make them like a world champion. Way more like intricate in like strategies and stuff like that. I believe in the NFL, like there's certain head coaches that like specializes in different, defense, offense, but also like special teams. So like, how can you enter a team and like establish a framework that is understood by the individuals and where they are in their career? So for example, in the Overwatch League, I would say that like some head coaches, they're fit to like maybe come into like a really good team already and like maybe try to compete with the Atlanta Reign or the San Francisco Shock. But I think an even better example is some head coaches are probably better suited for contenders to like, hey, contenders guys, like you're a bit inexperienced, but you have potential. I'm arriving and I will implement a framework and a system for how we approach maps, how we approach compositions, efficient practicing. But like that framework is already established in a lot of Overwatch League teams. So if you're one of those contenders coaches and get promoted, well, what can you provide that perhaps takes the New York Excelsior to compete with like the London Spitfire? So again, it's very hard for us as quote unquote pundits to like know what we're talking about in this regard. But I do think that, you know, just because someone was good in contenders doesn't mean they'll be good in the Overwatch League, and even vice versa. Like just because you're good in like the Overwatch League in some extent doesn't mean that you're better suited for like bottom teams or contenders level. So it depends on like who you are as a coach, what you provide to teams, and where you can realistically like upgrade what they're already doing. So that's just me saying that I have no idea what the fuck's going on.
Just for the memes, I want to pose something to Custa just for the memes real quick, because you mentioned like, oh, maybe some like contenders career coach should come on through. I'll just include Korea because we're talking about Korean teams. Let me pose to you 2 current head coaches from contenders Korea, and let me know if you jive with any of these guys. 2 on the 2 of the top teams. So Talon and T1. Talon and T1. You ready?
Yeah.
We have Pagion and 815. Do you like any of those guys? Vibing?
Any other vibes in any of the other teams?
O2 are running with a full like brand new coaching lineup. I don't really know them too well.
Yeah,
I think there's an ex-player in there.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, I think we should try that.
I think we should try Pagion. He sounds like a great coach.
The two most well-known coaches in contenders career right now are 815 and Pagion. So
that's just crazy.
Choices.
I think we should try the brand new coaching lineup then from O2. Also, I think Laurie's redeemable because of the fact that I will say Laurie's redeemable just because of the fact that, like, once again, like Johnny said, it could be better and like Avril said, it could be better in a full Korean lineup.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just don't think if you're a mixed team looking to pick up a coach right now, you simply are crazy. If you're looking at Laurie, is just the reality. Like, you're crazy. If you're a full Korean roster like New York, sure. Moby Dick, I think, is great and Defiant. I don't think there's any reason to move. Pagion 815, holy.
Let's throw KDG in the mix there too.
Yeah, maybe the KDG in there. So like, but I think overall that like this is that's the thing that's different when we talk about the experience angle. And this is also way off the tangent of like what I was supposed to be like. Initially, all I was saying was I was disputing the fact that the staff leaving affected Boss in any way because they were clearly ineffective. So it didn't matter if they left. But, you know, like it was because, which is a common occurrence. It happens a lot. You can have staff that are literally, even if they're not actively harming you because of their inability to do their job at times, like they're maybe their inability to work with their roster, they're still best to just go, and it would either neutrally affect you or positively affect you, you know? So I do think that this is like a good thing overall for Boston. So.
I was just saying, like, Askoff needs help because he's the only coach right now. They have one coach on the team. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree for sure. Like having an assistant is nice.
It's gonna be a first sometime.
Like, it just depends. I think also every roster is different. Like, I think we put a lot of emphasis on like we need more staff for people, but it really depends on like what the job of the staff are and like what the confidence level of the team is. But I do agree, he probably would do well having an assistant coach. I think that would be nice for him. So maybe they can get 815. Maybe they can get Pagion. I don't know. So maybe they get KDG back.
Just get all three. I think you should do a team with all three.
Maybe they poach like Chengdu and then have him be an assistant coach. Like, I don't know. It's just like we go over through the circle round and round. But yeah, I do think this is fine.
Wizard Young had a redemption arc. He's now on Soul. Have you seen him? He looks great. He's
I mean, what is his role?
Wait, you're saying Wizard had a? I mean,
he's Jack now, and he's like he's on a successful.
Are you talking like physical attributes?
You're saying his redemption arc is that he got fit, and then he went to a team that got
successful.
Really good.
Yeah, and what I'm saying, because like we've all heard the rumors of like NYXL in 2018. We've all heard that stuff circulating. So it's like the question is of like, I think there is you can learn, and there is things to be from experience, but I'm not taking my gamble on Laurie. I don't even know why I brought this up at this point, but
so this is way off of where we're supposed to go here. But like it was just simply me saying Boston will be fine without their staff. Sure, they can go with an assistant coach.
So you're telling me that Get Amaze is a shot?
Yes. Get Amaze! Honestly, yeah, whoa, Eagle Gaming, am I right, French people? Let's go.
I actually would fucking love if at the end of the season get a Mace return to the Eternal, I guess the Las Vegas Eternal next year, and then just fucking ran it back and just made it happen again. That would be hilarious.
Really
but
I mean, that's like Striker to Boston
round 2.
like round 2.
Yeah, maybe
Maybe not that.
Maybe
more
not
successful than that.
Yeah, maybe not that. I do think that Get a Mace is actually a great shout for a coach that probably should return to the Overwatch League, and we hope he gets another opportunity too. So maybe not the New York Excelsior, but could be a different team. I did see that Wizard Young is the head of strategy and data coach. I don't know why the fuck he has the most intricate titles in the Overwatch League after Huck, but
man knows how to negotiate.
Let me put it on my LinkedIn real quick. But I'm going to deduct from that Wizard Young is the motherfucker who put Profit on Brig because he's the head of strategy. So I don't know. Maybe he's a genius. Who knows? Maybe it is Toby. But
they were trading creative. They were trading creative, so they literally didn't have another support. So that's the real reason.
Well, no, don't take this away from Wizard. Don't take this away from Wizard Young.
Don't take this away. Hey, he's a mastermind.
But that is a master move. He's like, guys, we don't have. I mean, that's just genius. Because you still have to determine who's going to play Brigida, right?
Yeah.
Think about that, huh?
And also,
well, no, I think Profit was the only other option because they have 6 players, right? So it's like if creative isn't going to play, it's like, well, what are we going to do? Stalker or Profit? Wizard Young, the genius.
Hey man, I gotta give Profit some props. He beat out Stalker for the Brig job. So let's give credit to him. I'll just highlight this quickly because we're on the topic as well. The Overwatch League, they actually updated or uploaded a player POV from Profit on Brig. And you can actually hear AVRL and Achilleos cast this match as well while you watch his POV with the camera and everything. So, I know teams around the league have uploaded their own POVs using the replay viewer and stuff.
It doesn't have the casting.
That doesn't have the casting, but this is a neat little thing. So if you're interested in how people play Brig in this meta, this is a whole map from Profit playing Brig here.
What's so important here from Profit so far is that he's been making sure to pack his Genji. Notice that, player. Notice that he's packing his Genji.
And then you can go implement it in your own Overwatch 2 play.
Everyone in the comments of this POV video keeps saying like, why does Profit and Pro Brig players keep just swinging their mace nonstop?
Wait,
does anyone know? I actually don't know the answer to that.
Wait, you don't know the answer? Wait, you don't? It's because you might inadvertently hit something.
Yeah, the proc and fire.
It was a big thing during summer metas of like you should always be swinging. If you're not going to hold your shield, you should be swinging, and you don't want to always be holding your shield because you don't want it to like randomly take damage because you kind of need it. So it's like it is literally just for the very small % chance that you accidentally hit someone is why they do it.
I trust Scott. He's
always be
played
swinging.
Sport. Trust him.
Yeah, it's actually something that's very hard to get into the habit. I've tried, and it's just very annoying to just always be swinging.
All right, that's a quick, neat little video for you. I did have one more thing. Oh yeah, since we're on coaches in the Overwatch League, one final thing on this. I'm going to make this my 2 minutes where I give a fuck ton of praise to DPay for turning the Vancouver Titans around. Because look. People, after DPay left the LA Gladiators, they were always like, oh, he held the LA Gladiators back. They could never win anything with DPay. Always been unsuccessful and never lived up to the hype. He had so much money to work with. He had the GM and the coach role. And there was this big old drama. It's like, oh, he has too much power over this roster. All right, fair. Maybe we shouldn't have someone be GM and coach at the same time. But the way he's fucking coming to the Vancouver Titans... As I said, the idea of introducing frameworks and like a winning attitude and efficient practice, it's clearly worked out for the Titans. And I recognize that the Vancouver Titans, despite losing so much in the early season, they had a very tough strength of schedule. They did have the potential, etc. But you gotta give DPay some props, man. Like because there was like a solid year when everyone shat on DPay and were like, he failed with the LA Gladiators, he was never a good coach, and they should have always hired someone else. I think it's very evident by the way the Vancouver Titans have performed this stage that DPay had a real impact on that roster. The players have a completely different mental, like turn it around from compared to the start of the season when they were like tweeting like, haha, we're on the Vancouver Titans, we're just losing, lose streak, this is so much fun, blah blah. Now they're actually like joking, having fun with each other, and winning some games. So think twice before you criticize DPay. I think he's done a fucking fantastic job in the Vancouver Titans, and he doesn't give any credit for it.
I want to come in here as well. You go first, Admiral.
Oh, mine's really fast. It's actually just a meme. It's nothing of substance. But I remember in the when you do the watch point, the selection show, and DPay came up, my first thought was, oh damn, dude, they still didn't have a jersey for him.
Oh no.
Unlucky.
Well, my point was I think people need to slow their roll on DP. He has done a great job. He has finally got 3 wins. I'm sorry, Johnny. I can't follow you up on this, but here's my thing. DP has done a great job of changing the culture. He is a good coach, but what I'm saying is people are like, DP should be coach of the year. After this stuff.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. I did not say that.
I'm right. Johnny, everything you said is true and 100%. I'm talking to the people out there who are like, DP is the greatest coach in the world. He has turned the Vancouver Titans. They beat Paris Eternal, New York Excelsior, and then they won that Washington Justice game, which to me is the big indicator of growth and success. And I give them respect. He's changed the culture. He's put players on the right heroes. Mira onto that Junker Queen. Everyone feels comfortable. They've done a great job. But let's just I want to see more, and I want to see DP step up into that role even more because
I want to see a jersey.
Yeah, everyone wants to see a jersey.
I want to see the health insurance,
or at least the jersey.
Keep going and keep building on that. But that's all I'm trying to say. Is that's not supposed to be a slight against DP. I just think people need to be careful about some of these narratives that.
Yo, I swear to God, sometimes I'm listen to podcasts or whatever, and it feels like people are just making up. Who are these people, Custa? Who said that DP is the coach of the year? Were they your Twitch chat? Was it -10 on Reddit? Who are they?
I can back Scott. I've seen the comments. I can back Scott.
Thank you. Yeah. So there's people in there. Someone in YouTube chat, expose yourself real quick, thinking that you thought DP is coach of the year.
No one's fit. No one here is on average, no one here. We're not. And when generally makes someone's a comment, I've seen comments. We're not making up people to fight. Generally, we're not riling up the base to fight the invisible enemy. So
I just find it hard to believe someone on Reddit got 20 upvotes and was like, DP is coach of the year.
All sorts of crazy shit on social media all the time. You see people still to this day being the most unreasonable demands about all sorts of shit that are completely out of everyone's control. You literally still people unironically typing casters start game, casters talk too much, shit like that.
Yeah,
it's silly.
All right,
pause. Just start game casters.
I still thought one of the funniest things I saw was when Baroy got announced and he got announced for GM. I'm like, oh damn, dude, they already got Baroy a jersey. Look at that.
Do you think Baroy has healthcare, or is Baroy a Canadian citizen? Does he?
He's been living. No, he's married. He's married in Canada. His wife works on the team as well.
Okay, so he might get that via. Yeah. He might already have healthcare.
His wife was the social media
this
manager.
Crazy thing of us that happens in other countries. You actually get healthcare for just being a citizen.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that, but the thing is, that's what I'm asking if Baroy was Canadian or not. Because I didn't know if he was a citizen.
He's
German. He doesn't get the nationalized healthcare because he's not.
By the way, I do enjoy. I don't know if everyone knows the storyline, but it's Vancouver Titans is a mom and pop team now. That's a family run team. It's a wife and husband team.
I'm so happy for them. I love small businesses thriving.
You got to support small Overwatch League franchise. This is the mom
That's
and pop.
true. I mean, and when you think about wholesome small businesses, you think they're a giant ownership group, and you also think Steve might have LG. I think LG also a very wholesome organization to be helping run that thing. So good stuff.
Is Vancouver Titans the Williams Racing of Overwatch League?
Maybe.
That's accurate, John. They used to be winning. They used to be amazing. They used to win all the time. Williams, Vancouver, and now
they used to win all the time. Holy shit! Oh, that's great. Oh, no, people who don't watch Formula One, they have no fucking idea what we're talking about. Anyway, great bands. All right, let's move over to APAC. We spent a decent amount of time talking about the Western region already, but the APAC region were full of amazing matches and outcomes and unpredicted stuff as well. Let's just start with it. Hangzhou Spark. I said they were going to be the best team in the APAC going into the stage. Yeah. They actually had the worst record in the entire... They had one worse map differential than the Los Angeles Valiant. 1-5, -10.
Oof.
I don't have anything to say. I just want to move on, but I figured I'd bring it up for you guys.
You should talk about it. We should talk about this because once again, I'm still salty about the comment at the beginning of the podcast. So once again, just a reminder, there was one man champion in the Spark.
What?
I'm going to point.
That was
this direction.
No, that
direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here.
There we go.
Oh, no,
I think there's just I figured I think there's a problem with the graphic. There's a typo on the graphic. They mixed up Guangzhou and Hangzhou. They're supposed to be the other way around.
No, Guangzhou is the truth.
I mean, here's what I'll say. The but gotta keep Bernard in. They gotta keep Bernard in.
That was the most Changoon sub in the middle of a stage that I've ever seen. Like, why Bernard has been good for them the entire stage. He was good on the Junker Queen. I don't know why they thought subbing Gushue in was thing. Like, obviously they had the unfortunate situation of Alpha U wasn't able to play. Architect came in. He was fine, but not great. And like maybe they had some awkward practice time, but like if you talk about the players, like I think the backline really struggled. Like I think Super Rich and 90 really they haven't really had great performances. Their ultimate usage is a little strange, but the big person who went missing is Shy. You know, this is a Sojin Ash meta. You would think he would put on his carry pants again. Maybe we're asking too much from him, but he really just did not show up in this.
Sojin got nerfed. That's the copium.
Yeah.
To which the response was like, well, how come every other Sojin is good? It's like, we're not going to get into that.
Oh my god, what a knife that was.
Krong.
By the way, talking about Burner, it's really funny because like you're like, yeah, you got to keep Burner on this team. He's their tank now. He's the good guy. And it's like last year you would have been hung out to dry for that comment. Like last year everyone was hating on Burner. Now he's like the dude.
But we saw a year of him succeeding. You know, you got to put respect on his name. It's not a year ago anymore.
Like I think I said Bernard was like my most underrated player of the year after the Mid-Season Madness.
Here's my take for you. When was the last time that Gushue played really well to the standard that we still hold him from when he was back in 2019?
If you guys didn't know, Custa is like the biggest Gushue hater in the Overwatch League.
Biggest Gushue hater. It sounds mean, but like I feel like Gushue is riding off of 2019 hype, and we're in 2022 now. And he's like obviously the metas just haven't been good for him. It's just like, you know, Winston isn't as meta. He's still great at that hero, but other than that, I feel like he just has not performed to the level that we put him.
I'd say Gushue is riding off of like. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Did Gushue participate in the 2017 World Cup?
He did. He beat
China.
Was he in the
2018? I know.
18.
Or was it 2018?
Yeah, 2018. I know.
Okay, damn. That ruined my whole narrative because I was about to say because I couldn't remember if it was 2017 or 2018. Because if it was 2017, that would continue my narrative of 2017 World Cup being the most influential event in Overwatch esports history forever. But that's very unfortunate. But I actually do agree with Custa and that Gushue. He's got to have this is the problem when you give. He's probably been given a palace as per his Spark contract, and they have to redeem the amount of value they've given him. When you give this man, make him a local noble essentially. They made him a noble in terms of like his contract within the Overwatch League. Like he's royalty, and in terms of like his contract status within the Spark. So there's got to be. I'm sure they're trying to find ways to desperately implement him.
I mean, he did play a decent amount of Winston. It just didn't work out.
Well, that's the thing. Here's the real story of Gushue. Here's the problem. He's a Winston one trick, and I've come to terms with that now. I denied it for a very long time. The more I think about it, I'm like, he wasn't very good in the ball meta last year. He can't pick up the other heroes required of him this year. I mean, Bernard just covers the heroes ball way better. He's literally just got on Winston. He's actually a Winston one trick. I'm convinced now. Maybe he could be a two trick if there's a Ryan meta, but I don't think APAC doesn't play Ryan anyway, so it's like whatever. So I'm pretty sure he's just if there's a hard Winston meta, maybe he'll be the guy.
No, he should be the guy. He's gonna Winston still.
Outside of Winston metas, it's like what I don't see the value anymore. He's like the reverse Among, you know?
Reverse Amon.
What? How is he reverse? How? In what way? Like Amon, you're saying Amon learned like multiple heroes after being a ball one trick?
Oh, so not reverse, like a parallel Amon. Then they both.
Yeah, that would just be an Amon, but he just wins instead.
Amon, known for his diverse hero pool. Yeah, I'll ask you this. I'll ask you this then, because you had a conversation. I don't even know if this guy plays anymore. But who would you rather have, Gushue or Takoyaki on this team?
Fucking.
I mean, that's a little unfair to talk to Gushue at that point. Like,
Takoyaki was on the team last year. He left departed Hangzhou Spark middle of the season, having barely played at all.
I will say, Takoyaki.
Coach Rush said he was the most talented contenders tank there was. Yeah.
And yet, Coach Rush benched Takoyaki a shit ton on Element Mystic.
Yeah. He didn't play that much in EM. Like Takoyaki just had like one map, maybe a series he played generally.
Of all the games because of EM, Rush played Alpha. This guy Alpha way more than Takoyaki. I don't even know where Alpha is anymore. The guy's retired, but like,
dude, I swear there were like some frequent players who just like Alpha, for example. I think there was another one as well on like Element Mystic. You'd see them and they win all the time, and then they like never made it to Owl, and you're like, what happened to this guy? Like I think Guard was one. Guard was on the Lone Spitfire for like half a season, and you were like, Guard is amazing, and then it was just like, what?
I mean, that's essentially with like, I mean, that's essentially who is the who am I remembering? I think he joined Mayhem at one point, but he was like a DPS player that played flex support for EM, or am I thinking of someone else for a bit? I'm trying to remember. It was like, fuck, I can't remember his name either. But so many forgotten players, forgotten players up there. But I think we're getting off the point. The point being here, like,
Spark. I will say this, you know, it's for the people that don't know, here's some heavy Spark copium, Johnny. Listen, Spark did have the travel issues earlier in the stage where like the quarantine stuff, right? They were delayed and slow to scrims, and I was on that train. I was on that copium train for a long time, and I think I said to myself, look, no more excuses for the last game. In the final game, if they don't win, that's just all them. Like, there's no more excuses. They've had time to scrim now. If they can't beat Fusion, if they can't look good versus Fusion, then maybe they just do suck. But at least for the early games, I'm gonna chalk the early games up to, like, first of all, you're up against Shanghai Seoul, and then also, you know, you don't have
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But the longer you get in the stage, the less that is like a reasonable excuse, right? So
yeah, because they lost to Guangzhou and they lost to the Philly Fusion.
Yeah.
Tough.
You can't go 1-5 in APAC where you play every team and then be like, you know, they just had a hard schedule, right? Like, like they just lost to the good teams, right? Like, they just didn't perform well this stage.
There's just 6 other good teams.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you actually reflect on it, because I had, you know, I was obviously high on the Hangzhou Spark, but at some point this stage, I had to do like a mental reframing of how much I value the Hangzhou Spark, because you can look at Mid-Season Madness how much you want and just like, wow, Shy was amazing in that game. They still lost to the Fusion. Philly Fusion, they made it to the finals of the Kickoff Clash, and the Fusion now again qualified for the Summer Showdown. So in many ways, Hangzhou Spark so far this season is like, you know, very much like the 4th or 5th best team. I think you have to say 4th. Yeah, because they're probably better than Chengdu and their achievements so far. But like, I was like, oh, Hangzhou Spark, they're like the 2nd best team in the region for some time. And I had to do like a mental re-evaluation of like how good the Hangzhou Spark actually is. They've had a worse season than the Fusion, and they're probably like firmly the 4th best team in the region.
They're like two sides of the same coin, because how close are Hangzhou Spark to just being the Fusion anyway? Like, both teams.
Yeah, but they've lost to Fusion now many times. They lost to them in the Mid-Season Madness. They lost to them in the Kickoff Clash twice, I think. So
I think the record is pretty close. But my point is, it's like both teams sucked at the start of the stage. They both dropped a shitload of games, and then Fusion recovered and Spark didn't. That's how it ended up being. So, you know, Fusion does this weird thing as well, where like, you know, this is the 2nd time now where I feel like they had a rough start and then they recovered. Mid-Season Madness, the same thing. Last week in Mid-Season Madness, they just randomly come up, beat Seoul. M3 is the most god tier performance in the world. It's like, what the hell was this? Where the hell was this the whole season? And just Spark doesn't do stuff like that. Spark doesn't clutch out like that, I guess.
Yeah, do you quickly want to talk about the Fusion and their performance this past week? I didn't have it planned, but I have to say that I watched that series against the Seoul Dynasty, and I was like massively impressed by the Fusion's play. That was the first time this stage where I see them actually like play really good in this meta, and just like the way they're positioned. I think in general, when I rewatch these VODs of the APAC teams playing, I think they display an amazing amount of discipline and like respect for their opponent. There's something that Chengdu Hunters did, I noticed as well when I watched their VODs, that like where there would be opportunities for Genjis to dash in and engage and try to get that finishing blow that we see them do off the back of Ashe, Sojourn, etc. Chengdu and Jinmu would actually display a lot of discipline when it comes to making that initial engage. And I think Fusion replicated that for the first time this stage this past week when they played Seoul, displayed a lot of discipline. And if Fitz was playing the Ashe instead, they would find ways to like work around the map to find engages where Fitz wouldn't necessarily find the first picks to engage the fight. So the Fusion, they end up qualifying after beating the Hangzhou Spark, and they went to map 5 against the Seoul Dynasty. Chengdu Hunters, it's very much their own fault. Chengdu didn't qualify because it wasn't in their own hands. But just talking about the Philadelphia Fusion, how do we rate them going into the Summer Showdown? Do we think they're like the 4th team by far, or do we actually think they have a chance here against the likes of Seoul going to 5 and Shanghai Dragons? Custa, you're muted.
Depends if you put them above or below the charge, right? Now we'll get to find out where Custa puts them above or below the charge.
Well, I think it's really telling that the Shanghai Dragons chose Guangzhou. Guangzhou went 4-2. They look to be one of the better teams. They're performing well, yet they're still afraid of the Philadelphia Fusion, even though they've had a pretty tragic stage qualifying at 2-4. But here's the thing, like, they have that potential. They're playing MN3 full time at this point. They look like they've worked out the meta. At this point, Philly could do anything. Like, Philly could come up and they could just be as good as anything.
Philly could do anything.
Philly could do anything.
They could show up.
Average Fusion fan.
They could show up. Like, literally, I had this one guy who tweets at me after every Philadelphia Fusion. DMs me on Twitter after everything of just like the emotional roller coaster of Philadelphia Fusion. Well, don't worry, Philadelphia Fusion fans. I'm here for your hopium and copium. They could beat Shanghai. If they show up and they play their fucking darndest, if you tell me one Genji player who could go mechanically toe-to-toe with, who are you? It's Stalker and Zest on a good fucking day. So it comes down to, are the Philadelphia Fusion having a good day? They had a great midseason tournament. I could absolutely see them just being like, hey, guess what? We don't suck anymore. And just end up being good. With that said, they could also just be shit. So, good luck, Philadelphia Fusion fans. Have fun.
I'm predicting after the most Fusion way to qualify for this event, they will go the most Fusion route possible and get second in this upcoming event too. And I think that would be truly glorious for them.
So who misses out? Who misses out between Seoul and Shanghai for second?
I mean, looking at how Seoul's been kind of dropping the spaghetti, it's probably Seoul. However, I refuse to let go of my Seoul belief. I'm going to do what Johnny did with the Spark. I'm going to ride it into the ground until it's worthless. So like I'm letting Seoul ride, and I think Seoul will still. I'm still betting on Seoul to win the event, even though Dragons kind of look fucking McNasty. So I think it's going to be a Dynasty Fusion Grand Finals in APAC.
Wait,
Dynasty wins.
Sorry, you just said what happened to Shanghai?
They look
nasty.
They look McNasty.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, they look really good.
What did you think he said?
I thought he just said Seoul and Philly are going to be there in the grand finals, and I was like, "What happened to Shanghai?"
Oh, what happened to Shanghai? Oh no, well, the thing is, this is just based off my belief of like, so Fusion barely qualified for the event, the most Fusion way possible, just because Charge suddenly learns to like they've relearned everything. They've picked up Jimmy and Prita and shit, and they're just like, and then Fusion somehow scrapes it in. And then I'm like, okay, well, really cap it off. Fusion gets second in APAC again. That would just really cap it off.
But if Jimmy says anything about it,
do you want to spend some? You want to spend a few minutes talking about your beloved Guangzhou Charge, Custa?
I'll say
for the Fusion quick, yeah, bro.
Before we move to Guangzhou,
yeah, sorry.
Is that I actually think it's super based that Shanghai chose Guangzhou because like Fusion's peaks are so much higher. Like the reality situation is Fusion peaks higher. And I was going to say they peak lower than Charge, which is not true because Charge was doing pretty bad earlier. So I'll refrain from that. But like, yeah, Fusion's peaks are like, they are good enough that they maybe, to your point, Johnny, maybe they could win. Maybe they could come first. This is the part where I seed in the hoping for the Fusion fans, like, we could come first. But realistically, no, you won't come. Realistically, you won't come first. But the peak performance of Fusion is like, I could see it. I could see them like being that team. It's just, they are wildly inconsistent. For some reason, they're like a Hunters that have done better. They're like a more well-oiled Hunters. There's a lot of reflection of the Chengdu Hunters in this team in the sense that like any result is possible. And that's a scary place to be for Fusion.
All right. There you go. Philadelphia Fusion. Oh my god, we just gave their fans so much opium. This is dangerous.
I like to do that and then feed off the depression later.
I mean, honestly, the Fusion Hopium is the greatest gift there is.
It's
it keeps
so funny.
giving no matter what.
Did you see? I think it was BP's video of like the Fusion fans celebrating at 2 and 4, like just qualify.
Yeah. It is so good.
All right, they still have a chance. We'll see how the roller coaster ends for the Fusion fans this Summer Showdown stage. Let's quickly talk about our last topic before we head into our bracket and make our own bracket here. Guangzhou Charge. They qualify for the tournament, of course. Custa's been high on Jimmy for the past couple of months here. Stoked to see his boy qualify for the tournament. And Chengdu Hunters, they lose to the LA Valiant and the Guangzhou Charge this past weekend to not qualify for the Summer Showdown. So I want to bake these two teams together here, and we can talk about them briefly. They played each other, of course. Let's start with the amazing achievement of the Guangzhou Charge, the mini Chengdu, if you will, with Jimmy, Yveltal and Faraway and a Prita on the bench qualifying. Custa, how proud of you are you of Jimmy? Scale of 1 to 10.
I'm here to tell you guys about our Lord and Savior Jimmy. You know, Jimmy has been overlooked, underappreciated for the longest time. And I'm here to tell you guys that Jimmy is the truth. He is the one and the only. And he has just shown up and performed at a level that nobody could have ever expected. And you know why? It's because he's the GOAT. Okay? We have all these great hit scans that we talk about over the years. We have Carpe on the Philadelphia Fusion. Nothing to your boy Jimmy. We have Easy Han, you know, obviously a great hit scan. Jimmy put him in the ground. We got Shy. He was an MVP candidate on the Sojin, and all of a sudden Jimmy just comes in and just dominates him. Okay? We even have fucking Carpe. People say Carpe's fucking great. No, he's nothing. Yeah, Carpe twice. That's how good we talk about Carpe. And then Leave is, you know, like the MVP of last year, and Jimmy came in and just fucking dunked on him. It's not even close at this point how good Jimmy is, and he's going to send us to the promised land, okay? Guangzhou Charge, your time is now. We hype up a Pritter as this god tier hit scan who was supposed to save the Chengdu Hunters. No. He got benched by the truth, and that is Jimmy. Jimmy is going to come in and put an exclamation mark. The only two people he has left on his list, Lip and Fitz. He let them win the first 2 rounds, you know? He wanted to make it more exciting in the playoffs to be able to diff those guys when it really mattered. So keep your eyes on them. I don't care who else is on the Guangzhou Charge. Jimmy is the truth.
Hang on. Now, Bart, you have to say the line, Bart. Say the line.
You have to say the Jimmy fucked.
No. Has to be from Custa. Doesn't count.
Jimmy fucks. All day, every day, everybody. Is that a fire alarm?
No, that's just me singing.
Oh, right. I was like, did Johnny leave for a very important reason?
Yeah, there's just a fire alarm went off. Yeah, have you seen the copy pasta, by the way, of you on Reddit at this point? I'm assuming, Scott. Of like,
is that the one where I wake up and like
the one where you wake up, you bolt upright, and then it's like he just there is like Custa's fiance asks, "What's wrong, sweetie?" You're like, he just stares at the wall. Jimmy fucked. Like, you know, it's like the copy pasta is like very, very funny. I mean, overall, here's what I do agree. Jimmy is a pounder of the highest degree. You know what I'm really happy about? I've always thought Evotul, aka what is it? Xerneas now, right? Yeah, Xerneas now. Very good player, despite some attitude issues, you know, potentially in previous like iterations of his play. But like, I'm glad. And Krong, what a redemption arc from Krong.
Yeah, we have waited so long for this Krong redemption arc.
Like,
2 years. 2 years.
Like, holy shit. Like, I'm just like, when Krong first debuted, everyone was like, Krong is a god. And then essentially Krong did like the Houston Outlaws stage 1 season 1, where he was good once and did nothing for the next like 2 years. And then now he's back on Junker Queen. And I was like, holy shit, like what a redemption arc here from this guy, huh? Like, it does go to show you though, like it's something that's rather interesting, and it's kind of, in a way, I don't know if Charge do this because they like just truly believe in the player, or if it's like for other like reasons and stuff, right? But like, it's rather interesting for some teams that they've kept these players on the roster so long comparatively to like those teams that have like crazy like budgets or just like really high turnover. So they have low budgets where they're willing to like commit to players for like 2 years or so, because you can actually see that like, oh, like the player has value. It's just the question is like, how long are you willing to hold on to them? Because I think comparatively to a lot of traditional sports, like you'll see players get held on to rosters for a long time, or like stay in the league a long time because they're getting traded back and forth while we dump players so fast. So to me, it's just interesting because like most people would have said Krong should have been gone ages ago, and now he's actually having like a great, fantastic performance. We're not fantastic, but I would say very good performance for the Charge.
I mean, I will say like Krong is like the manifestation of like, why are you giving me your toughest battles, God meme? Because this man played alongside Rio for 2 years. And I'd happily say that Rio, he was not Overwatch
Rio
League.
Popped in the first year he played in the league. He was good, and then after that, there wasn't.
He was butt scratch in 2021, and I'm pretty sure he's happy to not play alongside him. But even then after that, it was like, all right, Krong, we're going to invest some resources in you. The people who are going to invest resources in you is a backline of Mandu and Karib. That's your backline. Didn't really go over that well. And then 2022, all right.
You dare disrespect Karib.
Did we touch on the fact that he stepped down for the Mayhem?
No, we didn't. Hold on. I'm cooking here. 2022. All right. It's a solo tank meta, 5 versus 5. You no longer have to play with Rio. He's off the team. Your backline, it's going to be unique. And fuck, what was the flex support name?
Far
away. Did he play the entire time? Didn't they play Molly at the start of the season?
Molly was benched for far away immediately.
Oh, really?
Didn't get any game time.
Molly was hard benched.
All right. Well, my rant kind of falls apart, but still.
We'll just pretend it's Molly. Just say it's Molly.
Yeah, yeah. Molly. We made a bunch of Molly jokes going into the season. We all loved Molly. But yeah, I don't think that Krong has been under the right circumstances. Holy fuck, it's all falling apart. It's all coming together, hosting, producing, and analyzing at the same time. I don't think Krong has had the best circumstances to play the game, is essentially what I'm trying to say, and failing to do so. I think Krong has been in a very difficult position by like his teammates and so on. But I think finally, this is now a roster where you're like, holy shit, Krong might actually be able to cook, because he has a solid backline of Yveltal and Faraway now. Choice One has been one of the most outstanding players since like 2020. I've been high on Choice One his entire time in the Overwatch League. Like since he came in, his Tracer last year was good, and now being able to play Genji in this meta, awesome stuff. And then Jimmy, I mean, playing better than Aprita, that's an accomplishment in and of itself, and just speaks to how well Jimmy's been playing. So this is finally a roster that Krong can perform in. So as much as I'd like to say that, like, yeah, Krong has, maybe not been as good the last couple of years, I do feel like the circumstances for him to perform has been absolutely awful. And finally, he's allowed to like flourish in this role. So that's what I'm trying to say in a very unfunny way.
I agree. The circumstances have been awful for Krong. We just haven't had any Sigma midders.
That too.
So yeah, I've been waiting years.
Didn't we play some Sigma early on this year?
Yeah, the joke is I think he's a Sigma 1 trick. So I've been waiting years.
Well, Soria, his Soria was good last year. I remember looking at Soria stats and I was like, holy shit, this guy's a nutcase on Soria too. So I don't know. Maybe it's just
Johnny, you're pulling my joke apart with facts. Okay, I don't like that.
Look, we are very unfunny podcast these days. The past 5 minutes have been torture for the audio listeners. But yeah, there you go. The Guangzhou Charge. Did you guys talk about Chengdu Hunters anything when I was away? Or
we're going to include it. I'll drop my take on the Charge. And by the way, and this is you want to talk about the Hunters as well. Half of the Charge is Hunters anyway. Like a Charge is like a really interesting team. Like they're really good at just picking up kind of like I wouldn't say off cuts, but like they're really good at picking up the bits and pieces and scavenging them together. Like Tony Stark in the cave and Iron Man 1. From all these other teams, we got Molly and Develop from Shanghai. Like, oh, you guys won some rings, get you on the team. Got the Chengdu guys coming on the team. They're just a bit of smorgasbord of APAC and just taking bits and pieces. And now looks like it's finally working. They won the Chengdu Civil War, that little Chengdu inside scrim. And the craziest thing is they only changed 2 members because Krong, Choice One, and Faraway were there the whole year. So they only swapped out Develop and Unique, and suddenly like this. And the coaching staff is exactly the same as well.
Well, Develop and Unique were a big problem. Like Develop just really did not perform well, and Unique as well on the Lucio. I was actually pretty high on both those guys because they theoretically have pretty good careers from contenders transitioning into the league, but they just could not string it together in the league. And I think, like, as I said, Xerneas is a great signing. He's always been good for the Chengdu Hunters. I think he was toe-to-toe with Nisha, and Jimmy's redemption arc on top of that as well. Yeah. So kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see it. It's just like, but 2 players, it seems like a major upturn for what is only 2 players kind of turning it around for the team. But at the same time, is like, we kind of threw in the joke quote a little bit earlier, but I think this applies to Choice One in a big way. It's like, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. I'm like, that strongest soldier is fucking Choice A1. It really is. Because I think Choice A1 is good enough that he could be a starter on like a lot of other teams.
I agree.
He is that good. He is fucking phenomenal. He's like, one of those. His back must have been breaking for 2 years in a row now.
The question is, like, how would he perform? Like, imagine if he was in a role where, like, he was in Prophet's role or he was in Fletter's role, right? Like, he's like a flex DPS player who had an incredible team around him. Like, what would his peak really be? Like, that'd be a really cool thing to see as, if the Guangzhou rebuilds into something like that.
The fact that he's going nutty mode with, like, subpar teams for 2 years. It's like unreal. It's unreal how good he's looked, even though his teams have not been good, right? But that speaks volumes to his quality, in my opinion.
Yeah. Johnny is in fucking crisis mode right
Johnny's
now.
putting out fires. Johnny's in the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, Johnny's the hero.
Keep talking, keep talking, keep talking.
What's going on?
We need a new topic, Johnny.
Chengdu Hunters qualify for the Summer Showdown. Go.
Okay, Chengdu Hunters.
No, they don't qualify. They don't qualify. They're not in.
No, that's the thing. Fuck this team. Chengdu Hunters fuck this team. That's the headline here. Chengdu Hunters fuck this team.
Yeah.
This is actually when I woke up, because I've been following their career with great interest, you know? Like, I've been following their career with great interest. And then I woke up, I was like, I'm still feeling pretty confident that there's no way they will lose to the Valiant. And they lost to the Valiant, and I was like, I can't. And then I went to watch the match, I'm like, this is some turbo ass gameplay I have just witnessed. Like, this is, it's simply mind-boggling how, and this goes, when we talk about coaching, by the way, you want to talk about one of like the most, I don't even understand, like the team that is most diametrically opposed to like structure and coaching in like the league, it feels, is Chengdu Hunters. Without Ray. Chengdu Hunters without Ray is just like, it's simply like, it's like finding a bunch of feral children in the woods and you have to reintegrate them into society. Like, I can't believe how poorly structured this team is and how they haven't like, and the crazy part is like they still have such individually good players at points, but also their management fucked them because they don't have like a hit scan too. Well, they have leave, I guess, but they didn't have a Preto. They could have been running for parts of the year, but like I don't know, like this. I'm done with this team, man. I was giving them like a break for Portsmouth, but I'm after the Valiant loss. I'm like, no, I've had enough of them. I've had enough of this squad.
It's kind of shocking how they have a player of the caliber of leave and they just like, you know, and they had such a good thing going for them last year into like whatever this is this year. Like obviously metas haven't been ideal, but that's what happens when you have a player like Jinmu who feels like he does pigeonhole their like strategies a lot. But yeah, I'm kind of the same point of Avast, especially at least this year. Like I'm at the point where I'm like, well, you know, they're just kind of like, it doesn't feel like they're ever going to overachieve. Like we always question of like, maybe this roster will bring it together. We're in the third stage by now. They're probably going to at least get an attempt at play-ins at the end of the season. Maybe they'll string it together there, but I just don't have confidence because of what Avast said. It just feels like Lord of the Flies out there.
You said the Valiant game of us. I'm thinking the Guangzhou game. Not to talk low about the Guangzhou Charge.
Sure, fair enough. The Guangzhou game too, yeah.
You still have to remember the Guangzhou, like 2 stages in a row, only won a grand total 1 match. But here it's like, I mean, that game, the especially damning part was like seeing the ex-Chengdu members and how good they ended up being versus the actual Chengdu team. You know, you look at Yveltal and Farway, and like these 2 guys literally were 2 potential. I mean, I don't know if I could call them starters because the 4 supports all got playtime. But you know, I'll just say for the example, yeah, let's call them starters. They basically started on the Chengdu Hunters last year. They ended up getting culled because of the budget cuts for the team, and now like they come in and they just beat their old team, and it's just like incredible to see. You know, Jimmy's beating Leave as well. And I think the other thing about Ray is like, and this is where like Ray has to be one of the most influential coaches we've ever had in the league, because every time he's in the team, not only do Chengdu Hunters look way better, but Leave looks better as well. Like it seems like his fate is almost attached to Ray, in a weird kind of way. Yeah, I know the role swap hasn't been amazing this year, but I still probably expected more out of his hit scan, given that like he can still play hit scan. He still has great moments of brilliance, but the consistency of him and the team together is just completely out of whack. I don't understand, because this team, I very confidently even said, now this is embarrassing, but I confidently said early on that the Chengdu were the 3rd best team in this meta in APAC. And I was pretty firm on that, but then they just shit the bed in the last week or the last 2 weeks. I'm like, what is going on? Like they look good, they look comfortable, they look strong in this meta. Like you know, like they just fell apart. Like it actually makes no sense at all.
Yeah, sounds great, guys. I have no idea what you guys are just talking about. You guys done with the Chengdu Hunters?
Yeah.
All right, let's actually get to making our bracket. We've been on for about 2 hours now. It's been like, you know, long, great episode so far. So we gotta get through this bracket real quick. I don't think we have to overthink it by any means, but Custa, you look like you're You look like you don't have faith in us wrapping this up quickly, but I promise you, we'll speed
I
run through this.
I was questioning if we're going to get a break because I was like, I should make another coffee. But
You guys want to take a break? I don't know how to go to break.
If we can just run through it, let's crush it.
Yeah, we can get through it. I mean, because I have to do a lot of shit. I have to pack for Toronto still. I have to get so much shit done. Like I got a lot of stuff done because I know the desk are going get owned, idiots. So get owned.
All right, let's just speed run this one through because usually we talk and we argue and stuff like that, but we can be adults too. All right, we don't have to do that. So let's kick things off with the Eastern bracket. All right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches here, so we should realistically be able to do this in 6 minutes, 1 minute per match. Okay, right. That might be a bit.
Let's go first. Guangzhou 3-2 Shanghai Dragons. We all agree.
3-2. I do not agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
This one's a 3-0 Shanghai.
No, okay. Let's give Jimmy a map. I mean, Guangzhou a map.
I don't. So here's the thing. People were arguing with me when I did my participant rankings going into this. The reality of the situation with APAC still, even though Fusion did have a close match for Dynasty, is that for the majority of the stage, Dynasty and Dragons have been dicking down the rest of APAC for the whole of this stage for the most part. So I still cannot believe, I still don't have much faith in like a team coming in and making it too close against these teams right off the bat, you know, even though Fusion did have a recently close game versus like Dynasty, right? So it's like, I'm willing to give it like a Dragons 3-0, honestly.
Hey. Give him a map.
What does Johnny think?
Johnny, come on, be reasonable. Be the voice of reason.
I think this is one of those metas where if you're one level above your opponent, you're just going to fucking shellac your opponents. And I think the Shanghai Dragons right now are world class. And while Guangzhou Charge are great, I don't know if they can hold a candle. Like, I don't see them coming into a map and be like, yeah, Jimmy's on form, Choice 1's popping off, we're gonna take down Lippen, who are you? Like, I have a hard time
for one map. You know, they could do it. Jimmy could fuck for one map. You know, Jimmy is just gonna dominate Lip for one map.
For the Jimmy lovers, I'll give them one for the Jimmy lovers.
I'm convinced that Jimmy could fuck for all 3 maps and it would still be 0-3.
No, hey, don't be ridiculous.
Because
okay,
his level of fucking is not going to be enough to take down Lip. Who are you?
Jimmy is a professional fucker, okay? If he fucks, it's over. Don't worry about that.
What's his day rate for fucking?
It's whatever the Guangzhou Charge is paying.
Jesus Christ. This turned real. I think as a producer, I'm asking the producer. Hey producer, who what do you think? You're the tie here. Yeah, sorry, it's 3-1. Sorry guys.
Nice.
Yeah, sure.
We were 2-2. We were split, and then the producer chimed in. Philadelphia Fusion against the Seoul Dynasty. This one could be a little bit closer. They went to 5 this past week.
Should I do it? Should I pred Philly?
No, you can't pred Philly. I think you can say. I think this is just a classic map 5 banger.
Can I pred Philly?
I have a feeling that this could be another map 5 banger. Yes, I could have a feeling, but the problem is my Soul hope's too high. I want to give it a 3-1 for Soul, not a 3-2.
Why?
But I think this is the map 5 banger, though.
Why am I so tempted to do 3-2 Philly? Why am I so tempted?
It would be the most Soul Dynasty and Philadelphia Fusion thing ever.
That's the thing. It's perfect for both teams. It is literally perfect for both teams.
Here's what I'll say.
Oh my god.
Fusion started that series strong against the Soul Dynasty. And essentially my analysis was that when Fitz was playing the Ashe, Fusion had their number and they just completely dominated them. But as the series progressed on Colosseo, for example, and the final map as well, like Soul just completely diffed the Fusion once Fitz was back on the Sojourn, and I don't think Soul are gonna run it back on the Ashe necessarily. It's going to be interesting to see if Fusion play Ashe themselves, because it did play Ashe against the Hangzhou Spark in the following series. Maybe this map dependent, but I don't think Soul is going to come out with the Ashe again against Fusion, and I think I'd probably say 3-1, my opinion. All right. Any counter arguments? No more Fusion Hopium.
That's the voice of reason. You're the voice of reason here.
That's the first time someone has ever said that to me, Custa. So I appreciate that.
I want to go crazy and go Fusion, but we'll stick to Soul. We'll do that.
All right. Shanghai Dragons against the Seoul Dynasty in the first upper bracket matches. Shanghai obviously 3-0 the Seoul Dynasty previously.
3-1 Dragons for me.
And so here
comes
I
some
don't have
ass.
any evidence.
Here he comes.
I don't
here
have
he
evidence.
comes.
I don't have recent match results. I just have the belief in the Seoul Dynasty that they will win the match. That's it. But I have no evidence to support that. So if people are going to go for Dragons, fair enough. But let it be known that I'm believing in Seoul.
Connor, you are every Philly fan pretty for Philly, like just except for Seoul. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the
The
difference
same
is,
energy is-
but the difference is for Dynasty, they've at least had a good, like an incredibly good stage. You
Actually,
know?
true. You know what? True.
Like the thing is, I just liked because I believed in Dynasty the last event too at midseason, and they shit the fucking bed at midseason.
Same.
I was like, God damn it. So, but I believe now this will be the time.
Yeah. You just said I'm not learning from my lessons at all this
Nope,
time.
not learning. Well, the thing is, but the thing is, there's reason for me not to learn because they came and they still dominated the stage.
Yeah.
So there's still reason for me not to learn.
I just get worried because like the bad omens were there last stage. Seoul, they lose to Philly in the last week. It's like, oh, it's gonna be tricky. And maybe it's a fluke, maybe it's a one-off, and then they just start like losing in mid-season. Like, what is going on? So like I'm getting those like Seoul heading into tournament losing jitters now. But I don't know, man. Shanghai just looked too good. Shanghai are just like
I agree.
unbelievably fucking good right now. Like it's crazy.
One map for Seoul.
Here's the thing. I think it's either going to go to 5 or it's going to be a 3-0. I think 3-1 is the least likely spread. So I'm good for 3-2 or 3-0.
Avast obviously wants as many maps as possible for his beloved Seoul.
Yes, exactly.
AVRL?
You know where I stand on this.
I'll give one. I'm happy for one.
Okay, so I think we'll lean 3-2. It's a tournament.
Okay.
Nothing is predictable. We can't just default to the most logical things.
okay.
I think 3-2. Why not? So Profit is going to show up on the brig somehow. Lower bracket. Guangzhou Charge against the Philadelphia Fusion.
Should Custa start?
Custa's looking spicy.
We'll get him to start.
3-0 Guangzhou Charge.
Oh man. You know what's crazy is like that could actually happen.
Philly, this feels like one of those stages where like Philly I feel like we're giving too much weight to playoff Philly. You know what I mean? Like
Playoff Philly.
Yeah, they don't they always come second. That's the meme, and they always seem to perform. But like, I don't think they're going to show that. They went 2-4. Remember, like, yes, they look better in their most recent matches, but I think it's like realistically, I think it's hard to spread the Philadelphia Fusion above the Guangzhou Charge unless you're literally just putting weight on previous performances of like they step up in the playoffs. So like maybe you can use that as an example, and you can say that, but like I think Guangzhou is going to win. I think they'll give them one map. I think it's like realistically, I think it's 3-1 to the Guangzhou Charge. That's what I would go for. I think it's the most likely outcome. But there's both these teams are so unpredictable.
That's your real no meme.
Yeah, no meme. I think my actual analysis, I think actually Guangzhou Charge is favored. Regardless of the Jimmy Hopium. I think, as I said, I talked earlier about the height of Philadelphia Fusion and how they can just hit this crazy peak, but I'm not going to gamble on that. And I think I just don't believe it.
I have a hard time.
Sorry, you go on. You go on, Avast.
I just have a hard time believing in Fusion if they keep him in 3 and losing to the Charge.
Jimmy?
I know, that's a thing. But like, surely Fusion, and also at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I think no matter what, from when it comes to APAC, and also many times at many of these tournaments, I just let the narrative guide me. I just jump into the narrative and let it guide me. So I'm going to say Fusion wins like 3-2 because Fusion needs to make it to the finals to get second. So
there's no way they make it to the finals.
No, I don't think they're going to make it to the finals, but I think they beat the Charge. So I'm saying Fusion 3-2.
I think the Fusion looked really good this past week. I'm leaning the Fusion as well.
Admiral, I need you here, man. Come on.
This is the thing. Is like
you're with me. You believe in it. The truth. The fucking.
I don't know if I look at Fusion. I agree with Johnny, but I also don't want to get baited by the Fusion.
They're baiting everybody.
They are baiting. The Fusion are baiting really hard. So this is the outcome that I think is going to happen. Connor, you talk about narratives. Here's a great narrative for you. Actually, instead of Fusion going to the finals, they're going to disappoint in second. I'm just going to disappoint them early by having them lose to Charge. But they're going to lose to Charge in the most tragic way possible. Fusion are going to be up 2-0, and then Charge will reverse sweep them.
Yes, I hope that happens. I'm in 3-2 Charge.
I mean, also that would still require them to lose in map 5 as well. So that is an extra oomph of Fusion. So, I mean, Alex, if that's where we're gonna go, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's wrong. I actually think Fusion are favored like 65-35 in this series. I'm higher on the Fusion than
like
most.
Fusion.
Just because they went to 5 with Soul and beat Spark.
They looked good. Like I'm not.
I mean, I feel like that's fair.
You're saying that you're like neglecting to believe in their performance. You're just like, oh, they looked really good this past week, but I'm gonna choose not to believe in their peaks.
That's because I've watched Philadelphia Fusion for the last like 4 years of my life, and they will never stop disappointing me and the fans. And this is like,
like they disappointed when they beat Hangzhou in the Mid-Season Madness. Like they disappointed when they went to the finals in the Kickoff Clash.
They're not the same team.
I was disappointed.
This is a
2-4
Philadelphia Fusion, not the fucking Philly that came. Like last year, the stage in the Mid-Season Madness, we were like, Philly could go far. We knew that they had a good roster. They understood what the fuck they were doing. They had one good weekend, and you can use that and ride off of that copium into the sunset. But this is the classic Philadelphia Fusion bait, as we always say. And you're like Guangzhou Charge, it's like you guys are throwing out everything else that they've done throughout this entire stage, and we're using their previous performances against them. They're 4-2.
I got a better one. They Fusion are up 2-0, and then they sub Carpe in for the next 3 maps, and they lose.
That's so disgusting.
If they sub in Carpe, I'm gonna get my pitchfork with the rest of the Fusion fans.
I'm just trying to think narratively. Like, what would be the most like uptick of hopium, or the most tragic downfall possible for the fans?
Yeah,
because I'm like a fan depression vampire. I'm going for the maximum harvest right now.
I just think that like with the recent end of stage hopium from Fusion, barely qualifying, they have that energy of like, we can do what Gladiators did not. We made it when Gladiators could. Unlike Gladiators, we made it despite our terrible stage, and we're gonna pop on through. We're gonna get it to finals, then we're gonna lose. And I'm like, that's the Fusion I know.
All right, Guangzhou Charge 3-2.
Right, I'll take it.
It feels wrong. It feels wrong, but
it feels wrong. I agree with you. I'd like to predict the Fusion.
Right.
But
wait, let's predict the Fusion. If you guys don't let me sway you.
No, I think this is how the stage is meant to be played. All right. Analysis aside, I think this is how the script looks. I've been part of a few stages, and it just feels like the Guangzhou Charge are going to beat Fusion in map 5 this time around. My intuition. Guangzhou Charge against the Seoul Dynasty in the lower bracket.
3-0.
3-0 now? Oh, is it 3-0 now, eh?
To the Charge. I genuinely believe that Seoul Dynasty is going to 3-0 Guangzhou Charge. I think Seoul is going to be
What the fuck are you basing this on?
I think Guangzhou
You sound
Charge.
like
Jimmy's
Jimmy's
going to be like, my job here is done, and then he's just going to leave, and he's just going to not do anything in this match.
You know what? If I can Custa going for 3-0 for Dynasty, I'll take it. Sure, I'll throw my weight behind that.
AVRL?
3-1 Dynasty. I think if Charge is good enough to get here, then they can make it competitive. But I think Dynasty are the better team. I'm thinking 3-1. I don't hate
3-1 sounds logical, but 3-0 would be
good bants.
It would be funny. Guangzhou Charge is like, we ruined the hopes of Fusion fans. Now we out.
Yep. That's how the Spark fans felt in mid-season.
Oh yeah, I very much know. It was brutal. I think we're going with Seoul 3-0 here. I've asked this on the same page. Custa mentioned it already. I'm on board as well. Everyone said 3-1, but 3-0 seems to be the pervasive scoreline. So we got a rematch of Shanghai Seoul in the finals. This time, first to 4. All the way? 7 maps?
I have no fucking clue. Literally anyone who says, if we get to the grand finals and it's Shanghai versus Seoul, no one has any idea what's going to happen.
I don't think this one goes 7. This one does not go 7.
I have a hard time. It feels odd to just be like, oh, Seoul Dynasty, they're going to be better over the course of 7 maps. Like Stalker will be better than like Who Are You, or like the backline of Lijigon and Isayaki will like be outplayed. It feels wrong. So in that regard, I think Shanghai probably is favored, like any way you see it.
I would say, I'm going to say 4-1 Shanghai. I think Shanghai is going to come out and just sort of show their experience. And I think they are the better team in this meta. I agree with Johnny. I just can't see Seoul coming out with that level of firepower.
No,
I'm leaning 4-2, I think. 4-2 Shanghai.
My gut feeling says 5 maps. My gut feeling says a 4-1. I think Seoul are good enough to go 4-2, but
Avast, we need some Soul Hopium in here. Come on.
I mean, here's the thing you guys are forgetting. You're forgetting some crucial aspects.
Okay, here we go.
Crucial aspects. First of all, the profit. Okay. Secondly, Smurf, Giga Chad, and
True.
Thirdly, he's been overlooked a lot. But he's an actual giga banger of a player. I feel like Fitz is about to lay it out on the table.
True.
I think Fitz. Obviously, everyone's talking about how he's like, oh, he's underrated, he's really good, blah blah blah. I just have the thing here is that once again, there's no actual hard-hitting analysis. Everything points towards like there's no clear way to call it, other than Dynasty maybe having some close matches recently, but it's against like an upcoming Fusion. It's simply me wanting to get a Soul win after pretting for them so hard in Mid-Season Madness. That's all it is. Honestly, I'm in a sunk cost fallacy currently.
Yeah.
I'm in a sunk cost fallacy for the Soul Dynasty where like they're good and I pretted for them to be good and they shat the bed and I'm just stuck in there.
Soul have a win. Soul got a win already. I think they've done fine. And, you know, it's
well, don't get me wrong. Soul have been great. Soul have been great still. I just saying like I'm stuck in the sunk cost fallacy from Mid-Season Madness here. Mid-Season Madness is what I'm trying to recover my losses from.
Right.
So I'm just going into it because I think I like this roster. I like everything they've done with it. I love seeing Smurf be like really do the solo tank. Granted though, he's had some moments here and there, but do the solo tank. I think mostly right for the Soul Dynasty. And I just love the build of the roster currently. I also honestly think for this stage at least now, because correct me if am I remembering this properly? In their latest, let me check something here. But yeah, overall, I mean that's irrelevant because overall I like the roster. I like this roster, and as they're gonna get Iris more and more integrated, I think moving on past this point, I'm also just more in love with Soul. It doesn't matter for this probably upcoming event, but I'm just I just like the roster.
You mentioned profit, so let me just bring forth a bit of a prophecy here. Let me just move out of the way so people can see, and I'll explain this to the audio listeners in a second. But just look at this for a second.
Damn, he already has a graphic made.
Damn,
that's last year's graphic. That's last year's graphic. You don't see it, but like this way a little bit. No, this way. Develop and Molly is still on the poster. So, it's last year's poster from when they won. I think
who are you?
Who I use the best? Yeah, who I use on this poster as well. And he is the best Genji in the world right now. I think he is the best Genji in the world. And in my opinion, Genji is like the most important hero in this meta for various reasons. Izayaki has been actually surprisingly insane on the brig, like so damn good on the brig. Actually, this kind of blows my mind. I did not expect him to be that good. And Lip has come into form. Like Lip had a really rough year. I think Lip's year has been not good. Like he struggled to pick up Sojin. And now when you look at his recent games with Sojin, he is doing disgusting stuff like killing Stalker while Stalker's mid-blading, he just like Ajaxes his blade. Just shit like that. Like just Lip just does that. Like that's common. That's just normal stuff for Lip. He just normally does that. I don't know. I can't see anyone beating that. And I can't even see Seoul getting more than 1 to 2 maps versus that. I just think Shanghai's form is unreal. Like they've reached a level that is just too hard for anyone to catch up to for this tournament.
I agree. I genuinely believe in map 5. I think like that's going to be Seoul's Hopium, but I think Shanghai is just going to come out and booty bop them in the grand finals in a 4-1 as well. I can go 4-2 if you guys prefer 4-2.
I'm feeling a 4-2. Or can we all agree on feels 4-2?
For Connor's sake, we'll give 4-2.
All right.
Sure.
An extra man.
Oh, I need to fill out the West too. All right, there you go. Our Eastern bracket. Got the Shanghai Dragons.
God, that was just the East.
At 4-2. Yeah, just the East.
6 minutes, right?
Speed running. Yeah. All right, here we go. A bit quicker then. These are pretty straightforward to kick things off. First off, the Washington Justice against the Dallas Fuel. How many maps do we give Justice in this win by Fuel?
0.
1. Dallas Fuel always drops a map.
Okay, true. Actually, big true.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, all in
fine with that.
agreement. London Spitfire against the Toronto Defiant. Rematch of the Sunday match where London Spitfire beat them 3-1. And according to the Yiska juice, London Spitfire have been good in scrims, but unable to implement it in matches. I don't buy into the scrim box. I'm sorry. I've just been hurt too many times. But London did beat Toronto Defiant in an actual match. Can they repeat things? On stage, in Toronto, on Toronto.
I actually think the Toronto buff, home crowd buff comes through.
I'm not buying it. Although Genji, sussy.
Okay.
Sussy and what are you trying to say?
It's not very good. Backbone is by no means like the standout player, but I think watching that most recent match, that was like they got diffed in both DPS roles, like pretty significantly. And I don't like, yeah, maybe Toronto comes out, and if Hisu and all those step up, then like, yeah, absolutely Toronto can win it. But like after what we just saw, I think London Spitfire should be the favorites.
I'm actually going with Toronto Defiant in this one. I think that was an underperformance against London Spitfire. I think Hisu and Aldo will be better on stage. I think they're coming in with a vengeance. They were obviously like shattered after losing that match, and I think they knew that they sucked. And then Moby Dick made like a pretty bad joke about, you know, losing on purpose so the LA guys couldn't make it. I think that was, you know, absolutely like tongue in cheek, and I think he just failed the delivery, so it sounded like he was being honest about it, but in reality, I think they wanted to win that match, and the players were devastated. But I think they'll come in clutch with the crowd buff. I'm on Toronto Defiant side here.
I'm on the Toronto Defiant train,
Oh,
baby.
shit!
Oh,
Boy! Only Custa with the Lone Spitfire.
3-1.
3-1? Hey, I'm just saying, like, we've had some matches on stage before where we just been like, holy fuck. Like, Dallas Fuel against the LA Valiant, I think in 2020 was a prime example. You walk up on stage and you're like, whoa, this is not my home office. This is not our living room anymore.
Also, I think that match was kind of that match also was like would have been way closer, except for the fact that Sparker literally saved the London Spitfire's ass so many times.
True.
Sparker was doing, people were talking about Backbone's Genji for some reason during match chat and like during my own chat, and I was like, no. This is the Sparker show.
Sparker went crazy.
It was the actual Sparker show during that match. And like, if he has a performance like that again, like they need to see someone answering from Defiant. But like, that's a pretty anomalous performance, I think, in terms of like, yeah, Sparker's been good, but he isn't hitting matches like that all the time.
Also, London Spitfire bombed out of the mid-season madness. They got reverse swept by the Florida Mayhem.
Yeah.
I'm
feeling Defiant.
Can I say you on a 3-2 because I think London wins push against Toronto.
So you think they win like control and push?
Yeah, I think they win. I think they win escort and push. I think they fail the reverse sweep because I think what happens is they lose the first 2 maps, they go to Circuit Royale, they win Circuit Royale again, and then they win whatever the push map is. Then they lose on control again. Because I think they've fucked up control a lot of their practice because they spent a lot of time practicing May, and I don't think May is that good.
Do we buy it? Do we buy what Custa's selling? 3-2?
I don't want to. I mean, it depends if everyone else is in it.
AVRL?
I'll go along if the majority is going to be like, fine, 3-2, but like, I'm fine to keep it at 3-1 myself currently.
I think the crowd buff is going to be too good.
I agree, 3-1.
The home crowd buff is like really strong for Toronto. And Toronto is actually like a pretty good team as well. And I agree with Johnny, is like they did underperform. Like to me, it's a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because although Genji's been good before this too. When you drop the Aldo Sussy, the Aldo Genji's been good the rest of this stage.
Yeah.
It's been all right. I'm not gonna say that he's like some world beat or anything, but
no, obviously not.
But like
that's
Backbone, I don't think it's a liability.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right. Toronto Defiant, we got them, upsetting, I suppose, on Spitfire, 3-1. Damn. San Francisco Shock against the Vancouver Titans. 3-0.
Yep,
3-1.
next.
Yeah. 3-0.
Yeah, 3-0.
No match Titans that just lost to the Boston Uprising.
Sorry,
Houston
David.
Outlaws against the compositionally flex support, budgetless Florida Mayhem.
I had Houston winning this 3-2 because that would be the most Houston thing to have this close. But I think without Marjed, I think this becomes a 3-0. I think Marjed is like a linchpin to a lot of what they do.
I think even with Marjed, this was potentially a 3-0. I'm not gonna lie. I think Houston looks fucking scary coming into this
agree,
They
tournament.
look good.
So I'm willing to just give it a 3-0 for safety's sake.
I'm done.
All right. Yep.
All right.
Like it.
Great. Let's continue with the winner brackets matches. Dallas Fuel against the Toronto Defiant in the upper bracket.
I mean, honestly, classic Dallas fashion match, 3-1 maybe.
Yeah, I think it's 3-1 again.
Yeah, for Fuel.
3-1 again.
The
Yeah.
same result they had in the qualifier game as well.
I
3-1.
don't think we have to further elaborate on that one. Dallas Fuel, obviously the better team, just pound for pound. Interesting to see if Edison can continue his Ash play, like AVRL brought up during the tournament. You do get losers picks, so you could favor Ash maps. If you drop a map or two, you could go towards
Doesn't
those
he
maps.
should
So.
like the Ash as well?
He does, yeah. Jesus played the most
No,
Ash out of any
Hisu
team.
likes the Ash. Yeah, he's
so even if Toronto are losing, they'll probably pick some Ash maps.
That's a good shout.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting, actually. I just love the Ash matchup. I think they're very fun to watch. Let's move on. We got the San Francisco Shock against the Houston Outlaws. So the Houston Outlaws that we're high on, that we think this could be their tournament to make like a top 3 finish or something like that. They do play the Shock that did get bopped 3-1 by the Dallas Fuel themselves this past week.
I think 3-1 to the Shock. I don't think Outlaws beat the Shock. I think they'll play them close, but
Dallas
can't
Fuel
see-
beat them with the Ash, and Outlaws has been another team that plays a lot of Ash. Is that an added benefit, or do we think Sojourn's just gonna neutralize it?
oh man, this is a hard one, but overall, when I think consistency across the board, the Shock. Well, actually, no, they did get their shit pushed in by Fuel, but that was against a legendary performance from Edison.
It was.
I feel like for
Do you
safety's sake, I think it's a map 5 though. I'm gonna say it. I think it's a map 5.
maybe
I could be-
hard
I could
to
be-
replicate that Edison performance.
Shock winning in map 5? Is that what you're
I think it's a Shock winning map 5.
I think so too. I can buy that.
AVRL?
But here's
I
the
really
thing.
rate Houston.
Houston's
I was
good
gonna
in
say
map
3-1,
5.
but I think I'm being swayed a bit to the 3-2. But I was thinking 3-1. Houston is such an inconsistent team. When you look at the results this qualifying, it's like really all over the place.
All right, let me sell you guys, Avril, before. Let me give you an alternative. Door number 3. What if we have a 3-2 Houston Outlaws win? San Francisco Shock runs it through the lower bracket.
I'm willing. I mean, honestly, I don't think that's impossible. At all.
I think there is a world in which that happens. As I said, Houston's pretty good in map 5s these days. Merritt, I don't know what he takes on map 5, but he is just on a different level. And
So
I think Houston, if Pelican shows up and matches proper or does better than proper, I think they can win.
So you'd need Pelican to match proper. You'd need Merit to probably be better than Kilo, and
Probably be better, yeah.
Dante to have some better rampages and stuff than Kolush, maybe as an off day or something like that.
Yeah, like I don't know. Maybe this is some bathroom fucking fumes coming through my head again. But like,
Lep and Lastros is Finn and Violet.
yeah, well, like Violet. Okay, here's my thing. I watched the Violet Dallas Fuel. Violet got punished a lot for his aggression, and Finn made some pretty bad brig mistakes as well, and just over aggression and like not respecting their opponents. I think if Outlaws play in a way in which they are able to punish them in the same way that Dallas did, I think Houston are in with a shot to win this match. I think it's unlikely, but I think it's funny.
Yeah, I kind of agree. But I think overall, just because of overall pedigree and how consistent they've looked still, besides the Fuel match, I'm willing to give Shock the 3-2 still.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
okay,
think
let's
that's
do that.
yeah.
Shock 3-2?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I agree with the Shock as well. I do very much like Houston Outlaws going into this tournament and enjoy the storyline, but I do think the Shock is the better team, and I'm not gonna let that cloud my judgment when I try to predict this one. So maybe I can do a lower bracket run. Before we get to the final upper bracket match, let's do some lower bracket matches. We got the Washington Justice against the London Spitfire here in the first lower bracket round. This is a tough one. I'm not gonna lie. I like Washington Justice at times. I think Assassin's been lights out on the Genji at points. Kalios, he's been dying a lot on the Junker Queen recently, but his offensive capabilities are there. Washington Justice has been so hit and miss, but when they hit their stride with Decay and Assassin, I think they've looked good. But can they beat the London Spitfire realistically?
They beat London in their most recent matchup, like a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
but
their
that was
thing,
a lot of
but-
May, right? No?
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to work out if that's like honeymoon period as well, of like they have the new roster and they're just sort of like nothing to play for. I don't know.
The same week Washington lost to Vancouver, so it's like
Yeah, I guess that's true.
hard to read into it. I mean, this is where like if you believe in London from their win versus Toronto, this is where you cash in that belief, right? So this is where I'm thinking London come through. I think they lose to Toronto for the home buff, but then London are still, if they can ride off that win versus Toronto in the qualifier, then this is where they can cash in a. I'll even give a 3-2 here because I think Washington have caliber, but just based on the fact they had a 3-2 game previously, but this time I'll just flip it to London instead of it being Washington winning 3-2.
I'm good for a 3-2 London win.
3-2 London win. All right. I must say, just to defend Washington quickly here, I feel like this could easily turn into a game where you're just like, whoa, Decay and Assassin are actually playing well against the London Spitfire, and like Spark or Backbone don't come alive. Hadi maybe not on the same page as Backbone. I do think that London Spitfire has to prove that they're good in the regular season, but they also have to be good in tournaments and elimination matches like this, and especially in front of a crowd. I do think that London Spitfire has something additional to prove there, whereas like Decay is a veteran in the league for some time now and stuff like that. So, you know, it's just intangibles, but I'm not going to count out Justice in this one.
Yeah. I'd even be willing to give London 3-1 potentially, but I'll stick with a 3-2.
Okay. London Spitfire 3-2 seems to be the universally agreed upon. All right. Washington Justice out in the first round. Still though, just 5.5 members on the roster. Can't be too shabby, this stage after all. Vancouver Titans against the Florida Mayhem without Majed, I suppose. Vancouver Titans that did lose to the Boston Uprising this past week. Who are we going with?
I think if Majed, if we got a situation where Majed to be there, I could see. All
right. So in the first match, you're like, oh, they don't have Majed. In the second one, you're like, what if they had Majed?
Okay, but they don't have Majed.
They did just delete that Majed tweet.
Yeah.
The tweet also did say they're trying to find a way for him to play from home.
Yeah.
Pelican has historically. Pelican played from home in playoffs last year.
Yeah.
It's possible.
That was a health issue. That's separate from a visa, right? But yeah.
They would have to set up a separate area for them to play, right? Because they couldn't, because one team could be on stage or something the other team couldn't, or something like that, right?
Oh, you just have 4 people on stage and Majed at home.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Here's the problem, because I think if Majed's here, I think Florida Mayhem can actually beat Vancouver. But I think if they can't play the double flex support, I'm a little worried about them. So it's like Majed is a big linchpin for me on this Florida Mayhem team. So I think I'm going to go under the assumption that he's not going to play just because that is the most recent information we heard. So I think Vancouver wins that like 3-1.
Yeah, I also think, it's odd to speculate about this, but I think it would perhaps set a weird precedent if you would allow Majed to play from home because they couldn't secure a visa, and maybe that would be understandable, but the goal for the league would be to have everyone in place, and when you start getting to like gray areas like this, it's hard to make like the decision from the league standpoint of like, should we allow him to play from home or not. In Pelican's case last year, that guy literally had like surgery that was like a doctor's order or something like that, and he couldn't fly for like health reasons. Very different from like, hey, we failed to acquire like a visa. And look, I'm not blaming the Florida Mayhem in any way. Look, a very complicated situation, very short time frame to secure a visa like this. How could they possibly have known? Not blaming anyone, but I'm not going to like assume that someone can't play from home.
It's a slippery slope, right? Because then teams might just like be laissez-faire with visas and then just fuck it, we don't need a visa, we should just play from home. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't want to make the assumption that Majed will play from home. Yeah. But yeah, we seem to think that without Majed, it's probably a Vancouver Titans win here in the matchup.
I think we go Vancouver.
Yeah. I think we got to go Vancouver. I think we got to go Vancouver in like a map 5, maybe.
Map 5? Give Mayhem 2 maps?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like, damn, but they're not going to have a jet. No, actually, fuck it. I'm going to give it a 3-1.
3-1.
3-1.
They're coming up against Aspire, man.
Yeah.
And like Hydron just needs to have another life game. He just needs to have another life game.
Jib or something.
Yeah. If Hydron has a really good game here, I could see a map 5. Without that, I think it's a 3-1.
Yep.
All right. All right, there you go. Vancouver Titans 3-1 against the Florida Mayhem. Let's continue in the lower bracket. We got the London Spitfire taking on the Houston Outlaws that have just lost to map 5 against the Shock.
I'm taking
Which means Outlaws are fucking pretty good then.
I think Outlaws 3-0.
3-0 from Custa.
Ooh. I think they're gonna play Madge, and I think this is gonna be the Outlaws' defining game. Like I think they're breaking the mold.
You think it's Madge over Boomed?
So you don't think it's Houstonable?
I don't think it's Houstonable. I
don't think Houston will take losing to the Shock at a map 5 or at a close game as like a boomable situation. That's like, oh, we lost the Shock the first time around. Like that's like that would actually just be stupid on them. Like legitimately they would have to be dumb to be like, we lost to the Shock closely. We're so ass. Like no, like I mean like that's just like that's actually just dumb. There's no way they have that sort of mindset coming in that like if they were to lose to the Shock in a close match, this is like we're gonna tilt off the earth. That would just be dumb.
As long as Merit doesn't get hard diffed by Sparker, I think Pelican's gonna just go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
All right, we'll
Pelican.
I'm happy to put a 3-0 here.
Yeah. Works
all right, right on. Houston Outlaws the advance. Next match in the lower bracket: the Vancouver Titans against the Toronto Defiant.
Another 3-0, I think.
Now here's actually I'm gonna bring in some intangibles.
Yeah, it's a Canada matchup.
Canada matchup in front of the Canadian crowd. This is where the Vancouver Titans, they've been drinking out of their Circle K cups the whole time. They swap over the juices in them to the Red Bull vodka mix. They go a little crazy. I'm thinking a map 5 Canada banger here.
But to
a map 5 Canada banger.
Tell me to who. I agree with you.
For Defiant.
It would be funny as fuck if the Vancouver Titans just like channeled like, hey, we're in Toronto and we're the other Canada team and we're just like gonna fucking beat these guys. You have Masa, DP on that team, you know. Mirror has a bit of edge to him, you know. I could see this guy rally like an Atlanta Reigns
team
style.
Morale's high. Their team morale's high. Like obviously their last loss was like not ideal for them. They felt like it was clear they were rough over that, but like I think their morale currently is like it's like the close you can get to a honeymoon while improving from like that turbo trash status, you know, of like, I think they're like right in that zone.
Spy versus Sisu.
I'm going. I want to go 3-2 Vancouver. I think this I think they have nothing to lose. They've gone through the first round. They've beaten Florida Mayhem. At this point, they're just happy to be here, and they're going up against Toronto. Toronto is nervous. Their palms are sweaty. Hisu's worrying about like not performing on LAN, and I think Vancouver's going to play confident. They're going to play fun because it doesn't matter if they lose that match in their eyes. And I think they're going to come through for a map 5 banger win over the Defiant.
Avro, what do you got?
I think Vancouver are that good. Like,
no, I don't think Vancouver.
I think this is pure like stage intangible.
I don't think Vancouver are that good, and Defiant have been good, but have dropped the spaghetti.
You're talking about stage intangibles. Like, isn't the Toronto crowd going to go for Toronto?
Yeah, but I'm saying
that's pressure.
Also, Defiant have dropped the spaghetti before too. Yeah. Defiant have like had moments where like I think Defiant will do a little bit of spaghetti drop in, but they're going to be fine because their talent level's high.
They did.
Yeah,
Seeker
but Boston played
well.
Yeah, Boston played well in that series. Like, I agree that was a bad loss. And I'm saying, like, I think this is just complete, pure speculation off the goop. Like, if you guys want to go for Toronto, that's the logical choice.
I think if Vancouver beats Mayhem, they're going to be feeling themselves here coming into the Battle of Canada.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I think Mayhem are like, you know, they're an off-meta team who might not even have one of the players that they need.
Yeah, but the point being, it's not. They're just the nitrous. They're just the nitrous for the Vancouver boost. And I'm not arguing for Vancouver to win. I think Vancouver loses.
I think Vancouver loses. I think Vancouver can come in confident. They can come in like feeling good. But this is where you like when you look at the results over the course of the stage so far. It's like when you look at who they've been and who they've lost to. It's like I don't know. Man. I think Toronto are definitely the better team. I might even give Toronto 3-1 here. But I'm thinking like this is.
I can't shrug off this London Spitfire loss. I think that's it. Like to me, that wasn't like a major mistakes or anything like that. That just like it slipped away from them. Fine. I think that was genuinely.
I can do 3-2 Toronto.
Lack of confidence.
Okay. Welcome to 3-2 Toronto team.
Yeah,
okay.
I want to do 3-2 Vancouver. But I feel like my sanity is like fucking banging my skull. Just like, for fuck's sake, go with Toronto.
No, it's Toronto.
It depends on how you get there as well. like it depends on like who wins push and like who feels good going into that map 5. Because if you're Toronto and you're up like 2-1 and then you lose push and then you go into map 5 and it's like, oh fuck, pressure's on, we gotta win map 5. On the other side of it, I could see Vancouver Titans just crumbling on map 5 as well, like depending on the circumstances, you know. Maybe they have a moment where like, oh, we need to play May or Farah or something, and you know, you mess that up. So it depends on how you go into the map 5. But my heart says Vancouver, my brain says Toronto. So it seems like we're split.
Listen to your heart, Johnny. No, I said I appreciate going off the goop, but I think Toronto 3-2. I'm happy to. I'll settle for it. But I want it to be remembered that I believe in the Vancouver. Maybe it's because they called me a hater in comms check that I feel like I need to get back. I'm like overcompensating now, being like, no, I believe in you.
Trains like going in the distance, you're sprinting at like Usain Bolt trying to catch up.
All right, I think we're going with the Toronto Defiant here. There we go. Which leads to the Houston Outlaws against the Toronto Defiant.
Okay. I don't think the Toronto Defiant crowd buff beats the Outlaw.
Yeah.
I don't think
Unless
so.
it's Houston Bowl.
No.
I mean, it is, but
it is the same day. It's the same day. Is this a match after? No.
I can't invoke it.
Dallas Fuel. This is the Dallas Fuel Shock is between Vancouver and Houston.
If it was Houstonable, they will lose to London. I think if they once they beat London, it's no longer Houstonable at this point, and I think that they are the better.
Quantify Houston into this manner. There's no quantifying the Houston mechanics.
They're either going to shit the bed. If they come out and finish 4th, that's not shitting the bed. That's just being fine. Houston I think they're either going to overachieve or underachieve. I don't think they're going to hit the middle.
I could see them hit the middle.
Yeah, I think they beat. I think they beat Defiant here. That's my take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially.
I don't think it's a 3-0 though.
Yeah,
I think it'll be at least a 3-1.
I think that Vancouver match is going to be nerve-wracking. And again, intangibles, but like as someone who's like played like two matches on stage like in a single day, the fucking adrenaline and like emotions that run through your body as you play like on stage. So like if you're in a close match against Vancouver on stage and like the Canada matchup, you get one match off and then it's like, hey, you gotta play Houston Outlaws now. You're like, oh fuck, man, like I need like 3 Red Bulls at this point. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough mentally for Toronto to be ready for this match as well. Houston gets some added rest in the match against London in the morning. So yeah, leaning Houston Outlaws here. What map count are we talking?
3-1.
It's got to be 3-1 or 3-0, right?
I'm going 3-0. I think.
You think they're just going to tear through London?
I think they're going to fucking slap them.
Would you call that overachieving?
Toronto did lose to Spitfire.
It's 3-0.
I think the Spitfire match was an anomaly. I think it's going to be at least a 3-1 for Outlaws.
3-1. I want to go 3-0. I just have a hard. I don't think the series will be competitive. I think this will be one-sided as fuck. That's my opinion.
I agree. I think Pelican is going to go crazy in both of these matches.
I think Defiant will. I think Defiant will have a pop off here. And they'll be good. And also, I really do rate the new, what used to be the old Adamantium backline of the Gladiators has now been transferred to the Toronto Defiant. The Toronto Defiant backline is the new Adamantium backline of Toronto and Twilight. They're so good at not only disengaging from blades and living, but negating Junker Queen value a lot. They're really good at that with their boops and the flails and such. I really rate this backline. I think that they're going to do great because a lot of the value for the Outlaws is really built around like, okay, we're like ult cycling really well. We're setting up Pelican. We're setting up Dante for these big ults. If you have 2 great support players to mitigate a lot of that value, I think it brings a much more in line to a close series.
Is there any crowd buff here for Toronto that can carry them through for one map?
Yeah, maybe, but
I'm leaning on.
I mean, if Toronto were to win a map, like I could see them come out and like maybe win on control, and then I think
what I'm thinking. They win the first map, and
or,
the Outlaws get the rest. What I'm thinking.
I'm fine. I just don't. I think it would just be. I think it would just be, especially because how good the backline is at mitigating this value here, and so integral. I think to Defiant's things that even if Hisu and Aldo don't have like a perfect showing, they still can like shut down some of the value, some of the pop off of Outlaws to where I feel like it earns them a map.
All right. 3-1. Houston Outlaws against Toronto Defiant seems to be the prevailing answer. Let's head back to the upper bracket. We got the Dallas Fuel taking on the San Francisco Shock in the upper bracket final. Dallas Fuel have just defeated Toronto Defiant 3-1 themselves. San Francisco Shock in a close 5-map banger against the Houston Outlaws the day before. Dallas Fuel against the San Francisco Shock, a rematch. Dallas Fuel beat them 3-1 this past week. What do we think? Do Shock have a chance to redeem themselves in this one?
This comes down to whether you believe Edison's performance can be replicated again and again and again, and if it's going to be on the Ash, and then if it is going to be the Ash, do Shock just give Fuel a bunch of Ash maps? Because I'm thinking, and this is a bit of an issue for me as well, is because like normally I'd be like, oh yeah, no, Krusty just not going to do that. Why would you give the Fuel the good maps? But then you see them pick Gibraltar versus Glads and MSM, and you're like, okay, well that didn't make sense either. So really what Shock shouldn't do, what they should do is kind of avoid the things that are good for the Fuel.
For what it's worth, Dallas Fuel, they come in with the higher seed. They will have the first map pick in this one, and Shock will get to choose 2 following maps.
So let's imagine Fuel maybe pick something like an Ilios. It's the most Ash friendly map if they want to force Ash.
Yeah.
Shock then get.
I don't think Shock is great
picks
historically at Ilios either. I believe going into mid, that was the case mid-season madness. Don't know about.
They picked Ilios a lot in mid-season. They felt like they were good at Ilios in mid-season. Whether they actually were or not is up for debate, but they felt like they were good. I think they probably hybrid. They don't go Paraiso. They go Hollywood and Midtown, maybe even in Midtown. I'm
gonna be fucking honest, guys. I'm leaning Shock for the upset winner.
That's the thing is like I think Shock with map picks and an understanding of how they lost the Fuel have a good chance to just beat the Fuel here. I think Fuel win if they get everything they want. But otherwise, I think Shock like have a good comeback versus Fuel here compared to previous game.
Just
I think Dallas wins this the winners round 3, and then I think Shock is going to win in the grand final over Dallas.
What? You like fucking jumped 2 steps in advance.
Well,
you don't have to give us the grand finals crumbs, but give us the crumbs as to why Dallas Fuel at least beats Shock here.
Because I think Dallas had first map pick. I think that they look comfortable. I think that they should come in with confidence in this match. But I don't know, something about this just feels like the Shock. Like I can feel it in the tremors in the ground that I think Shock is going to come back. And I think in the playoffs, I heavily believe of what AVRL was saying is I don't think Edison can consistently replicate that level of performance on hit scan that he did. I don't think he can hard diff Kilo in the way that he did in that match. And I'm willing to give Dallas the advantage because they have first map pick. But I think going into the grand finals when it is a best of 7, I think Shock are going to take it.
Okay, so I take the other side of that argument. I feel like it's more likely that Shock are going to win this one against the Dallas Fuel, just like how they beat the LA Gladiators in the mid-season madness in the upper bracket, because for example, they now have a read on how Dallas Fuel plays. They'll go in with that information, and maybe they'll execute some kind of strategy. Dallas Fuel will be caught off guard, and it's almost like boxers in a ring. Then Dallas Fuel will come back from the lower bracket, and they'll get a chance to improve upon the mistakes they committed in the upper bracket match. So I'm almost going like the other way around. I think this one would be the one for Shock to win, and then Dallas Fuel coming back in the grand finals. Just because like how the prep comes out. And Edison's, amazing Ash performance and whether it can be replicated.
I feel like I'm taking a Fuel win here.
Okay.
I think
feels like people are leaning Dallas Fuel then. All right.
I'm back on my Fuel bullshit, actually. I think I am. Yeah, I'm going Fuel. They win. But I will say it's probably a banger map 5.
Map 5. Okay.
Yeah. I think Fuel and Shock are going to be... So remember when I said 90% of teams, like the prep shit's bullshit? I think these are the 10% where it might actually matter for these squads. Because I think both of them probably recognize they're the 2 best teams in this event.
Yeah, it's also like... Prep aside, it's not only about the prep when it comes to like adjustments to like playstyle and composition. It's also like the confidence that prep provides. Like the Shock going into this matchup, understanding what some of the frauds were in the previous matchup, and like now having the confidence upon your own play and not just feeling like you're the underdog necessarily. So I do think Shock comes in like rejuvenated into this matchup. But, you know, again, intangibles. Like, what the fuck does it matter? Dallas Fuel has been a better team so far. So, seems like we're leaning Dallas Fuel to win this one anyway. 3-1, 3-2. Do we agree with Avast? There's going to be a map 5 banger?
If we think Dallas is winning, I think probably a 3-2, right? I think Shock, especially with map. Here's the thing: we're in map pick area now, where like usually in these playoffs types of games, map pick is a thing. You know, we get close to games, especially among high caliber teams. So I think like 3-2 to me is more reasonable. Here's
why I don't think it'll go to map 5. Dallas Fuel are extremely good at push maps. And so if it were to go to 5, I think you'd have to... I think the road to Shock 5 would be first. Shock winning Escort and Hybrid, which I don't think they'll go up 2-1 in this series. So I that's why I'm leaning 3-1 Dallas Fuel, because I think they'll just like win either Escort or Hybrid and then win on push. And control, because it's their map pick. All right. 3-1. You know, we're a fucking auction right here. Going once, or 3, going thrice, twice, once.
Yeah. I'm down for 3-1.
All right, 3-1 Dallas Fuel. There it is.
I'll trust you on this one.
All right. I just made all that up. No, I'm kidding. Houston Outlaws against the San Francisco Shock in the lower bracket final for a spot in the stage playoff finals. The Houston Outlaws put on an absolute tier in the lower bracket. Shock just got slacked by the Dallas Fuel 3-1 in the upper bracket. Is this the time when Houston Outlaws fulfill their 5-year-old promise or whatever to be good in a non-Junkrat meta?
I think there is two sides of this. I don't think this is ever close. In a way of like, I think Shock either 3-0 booty bops the Houston Outlaws or the Houston Outlaws win. Maybe in map 5, but I don't think Shock wins this 3-0, 3-1 or 3-2. I think Shock. It comes down to, for me, it's Shock. Like, do they choke in the playoffs again? Like, that's kind of what I'm feeling. Are they going to like just, oh shit, we're in the lower bracket now, panic and just fall over? Like, they haven't done that. Like, they've never won anything, but I wonder if this is where the pressure sort of like mounts up onto them, that they have to play against a potentially very good Houston Outlaws.
Shock don't get a night's rest.
Yeah.
Am I crazy in thinking Shock are kind of due for a win almost? I think Dallas is due for a win as well, but it's like grand finals, mid-season madness, where like went to 4-2. Maybe if they don't C9, could have been a map 7. And they had the 20-0 record this time around. They look at minimum to be the second best team in this meta in NA.
Sorry, I interrupted your point, Darryl. Go on.
I mean, I'm basically just finishing off by saying that, you know, like, to me, like they look like they're due. They look like they should be the better team compared to Houston. They're kind of due for a win. Like, the Shock roster is of that caliber to me. Or maybe I'm overrating them, but
would we give any credence, I don't know if that's the word, to the possibility that we're looking at a 2021 playoff scenario where the San Francisco Shock and Dallas Fuel, they're the two best teams in the tournament. Shock, they go down to the Dallas Fuel, disappointed in their loss, get a day to recover, but then has their eyes on the prize of that finals match. They kind of like dismiss this Houston Outlaws matchup, and we get like an Atlanta Reign Dallas Fuel scenario where Houston Outlaws is actually a super formidable opponent with Merit and Pelican on firing on all cylinders, and Shock don't come in exactly in the same kind of high spirits.
And then following that storyline, Houston go to the finals and get 0-4.
Maybe. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, is that a possibility, or do we think Shock is just like the superior team and Houston Outlaws won't be able to overcome them?
That's what I believe. Like, I believe that is like the scenario as well. That like Houston, there's a world in which Shock like just like loses to Houston in like what feels like an unfathomable way, and then Dallas people just like walk it home to the park and just like, because I think Dallas is just better than Houston. But I genuinely believe in my Shock making their run. I think this is Shock's time to win, like Abel said earlier.
Avast, Outlaws against the Shock in the lower bracket final.
I think there's probably one of the best Outlaws I've ever looked. I think Shock they're beginning to build the momentum to go back to the grand finals here. 3-2 map banger. Outlaws Shock. I think this is the best Outlaws have looked to me heading into like any event. And I feel really confident about. I think they're also going to be like, this is the one. And the problem with the Outlaws is that sadly, it's not your time yet, little bro. It probably won't be for a long time. So I think Shock, they're going to win this in the map 5. Houston fans are going to be crushed.
Dude.
Shock is going to walk away like, whoo, that was close. They're going to the grand finals and they're about to blow out some backs.
Tell you what,
finals.
Philly fans are upset they keep coming second. Houston fans are upset they can't even get to second.
Yeah. Could be worse.
All right. San Francisco Shock beating Houston Outlaws in a 5-map banger. There we go. And that sets us up for the Dallas Fuel San Francisco Shock stage finals matchup. And this is where Custa, he wants the fucking payoff for the story of the century.
I want Game 7 Giga Banger Shock wins in Game 7.
Do you think they play 5 maps and then 7 more for totaling 12 maps in like 3 hours?
Proper puts his fucking flag on the MVP race. Like, you know, he's at the top there. He's been dancing for the last fucking 2 stages. And now he's going to supplant his flag into the mountain and he's going to go crazy against Dallas.
The only time I can recall this has happened in Overwatch history was when London Spitfire won Stage 1 2018, when I think they beat like Houston Outlaws in like 4 or 5 maps, and then went like fucking 7 maps or something against New York Excelsior in the finals again. I think Seoul Dynasty did it once in 2020. There was no Kickoff Clash. It was the equivalent to Kickoff Clash or whatever against Shanghai Dragons. They played like 12 maps in a row. I cannot begin to fucking explain how mentally draining and difficult it is to play like over 10 maps in a row of Overwatch and compete at the highest level. So you think with San Francisco Shock going to 5 and then beating them in 7?
Here's my disagreement. I don't think the Shock Houston game is going to be 3-2. I think Shock is going to win 3-0 and then walk in with that confidence into the Dallas match.
Okay.
That's where my path differentiates from this one.
Okay.
That seems wild to me. 3-0.
I mean, Custa's story is very attractive, but it is
an attractive story.
I'm writing a narrative here. I'm not.
But I think you're
reasoning.
underplaying the power of. I think you're underplaying Outlaws a bit, though. With that,
I think you guys are overplaying Outlaws, and that is my counter. Like, I think Outlaws are going to beat through, and they're going to have the best run. But you guys are saying that Outlaws is going to have their best run ever and make it to the grand finals against 2 Titans of the Dallas Fuel and.
No, I don't think they're going to make it to grand final. Whoa. I'm saying Shock beats him in the map.
Well,
5.
but okay, but you're saying that, like, I don't know. I don't believe that Merritt and Pelican are going to be able to put them to that level. I think we're being unrealistic. I think it's going to be a great tournament for Houston. The best tournament they've ever had is the best, but I just think Shock is going to come into this lower bracket fucking angry.
Do we want to change to a 3-1 of the Houston Outlaws Shock? Do we want to go back and change to a 3-1, or are we sticking to the 3-2?
No. You don't have to change that.
All right. We'll stick to the 3-2. But let's start here. Do we have Dallas Fuel or the San Francisco Shock winning the finals? Custa's been saying it's the Shock. I've asked the Navril. I want to know, Dallas or Shock?
I've been saying it's like Shock's due for a win, but I also think Dallas are due for a win as well, because they
okay, who is the better team? You don't always get what you need or want.
I think Shock is a better team, but I also think Shock has this weird, like, matchup versus Dallas where, like, what's the historical win record between these 2 teams? Because anecdotally, it feels like Dallas have beaten Shock more often than not, and for Shock, it's just like a weird matchup for them. Like, did they not lose to Fuel in Kickoff Clash as well? They would have lost the Fuel in the way.
They might have,
yeah. I'm pretty sure they did. Or did it lose to Atlanta Rain? Dallas? I don't know.
Yeah, they did. They got 3-0 by Shock in the lower bracket semi-final in the Kickoff Clash tournament. It's just one of those things, right? Like, I feel like Shock is a great team, but then Fuel is just a team that always gets in their way. It's hard for me because I think Shock is the better team in this meta. I think they're more well-rounded. And I'm also riding on a lot of proper here to just carry through.
And that's it. I'm riding on a lot of proper stepping up, Kilo stepping up, and Edison not being able to put that performance up again. Like, Edison, like, we talked about Edison of, like, he was barely even the hit scan player for Dallas Fuel heading into the stage. And, like, yeah, he's been lights out, and he especially exploded in that match against Shock. But do you guys think he can replicate that time and time again? in a
I don't think he
7-map
necessarily
series.
has to be. I don't necessarily think he necessarily has to put up that, because that level of performance is to get a pretty dominant victory, right? He can put up a pretty just a good performance and still edge out a narrow win here versus the Shock.
I have a lot of
for him,
respect for
having a pretty
Sparkle
dominant 31.
and Hanbin as well. So it's tough. It sort of evens out. I'm kind of leaning Dallas Fuel here. Avast, I need your input on this one. Dallas Fuel, San Francisco Shock, and a map score. No one will ever watch this again after this weekend. Don't worry.
I think Hanbin's a better Jungle Queen than Kalush.
True.
I agree. I think Sparkle at his peak, he's not quite as good as Proper, obviously, but he's putting up and the way they played with Edison, it's very clear that he understands what Sparkle has always done in every iteration and every meta. Sparkle has always understood his role exceptionally well with like what he needs to do for this team. And he clearly showed that when they played the Shock and throughout the rest of the series before this. And also, he's an incredibly talented Genji player. I mean, he was known as like the best Genji player coming out of Korean contenders, right? When he got picked up.
Yeah.
Overall, because I'm just trying to compare one by one of these things, I don't think there's a clear roster difference other than Proper, and obviously it depends if Edison shows up and has a similar performance, which I think he will, because I think he's looking really good and got confidence back. To me, personally, Shock relies very, very heavily on Proper to still pound for this team to have success at times. So, and here's the worst part about me saying what I'm about to say, is that Tasmo has been giving me so much fucking shit.
Insider trading.
And so I'm going Fuel 3-2.
In a grand final.
Oh, is it Matt? It's first to 4. I'm going Fuel. And also, I think these teams, I think they're gonna want it real bad. I think it's gonna be a giga banger 4-3 then for Fuel.
4-3 Dallas Fuel.
I fucking hope it's not a 4-0 final. If these two teams meet and one blows out the other, I'm going to be so fucking sad. I don't care who wins, as long as it's close.
This goes at least 6. I see this going at least 6, if not 7.
Because really, when you break down these two rosters and think about how they're performing, I don't think you can clearly say across the board that there is any based off this current time and point, there's any gap in the rosters other than Proper's individual level, right?
But I think
with Fuel having some better key pieces even.
Yeah, I think it's backable.
In a BO7, there's only one push. So
it's a good shout.
Tough.
Fuel being dominant on a push, oh cool, there's only one of them in a 7 mapper. So there's a lot more opportunities for Shock to get better matchups. So even if we say Dallas win, I think it has to be a 4-3 win for me personally. It's either 4-3 Dallas or I think Shock will take it. I don't hate Dallas winning here because I think both teams are due for a win.
I think
it's such a coin flip.
I think this is going to come down to the very granular details of figuring out a very specific kind of behavior or opponent's Genji or something like that, or how can you shut down Proper. I do not like to put all my eggs in the Proper basket.
You're putting it in Edison basket then?
No, no. I'm putting it in the Hanbin Junker Queen and it's a sustained meta. It's team play meta, good support ultimates, great Junker Queen play, positioning, not allowing your opponent to get opportunities to dash in and get final blows, not taking unnecessary damage, stuff like that. I feel I'm more ready to be calm and predict the Dallas Fuel to play that way. Whereas I feel the Shock is a bit more volatile in that regard. Maybe open themselves up to get picked more by Sojourns. Maybe Kilo is a bit more volatile in his play. Maybe take two aggressive angles, which can be rewarded. And then Kilo can pop off and be amazing in that regard. Maybe Proper finds opportunities to dash in and get those frags. I feel this is a meta that is about minimizing mistakes. It's about being disciplined. And I feel I have more faith in the Dallas Fuel to play that very disciplined way. More so than the Shock showing up with Proper and then just rallying behind it. That's how I feel this meta plays out.
I'm ready for the timeline of Dallas winning here, and then Proper getting MVP and Rookie of the Year having no titles. I'm down for that timeline.
like proper crying on stage, like holy fuck, I tried and we didn't get it done, and everyone's like, this guy's the fucking goat of this year.
Yep.
And not all time, but
then we, you know, it's going to be another thing of like, hey guys, remember MVP is not just about titles. And then Proper just has no titles and wins it all. I'm like, yeah, but kind of still deserved.
this could also be, you know, if you look at it the other side of the coin, Shock win 4-3 or something like that, and Proper is just like by far the stage MVP, and like there's going to be like 10% of the Reddit audience that's just like, can we compare Proper to Faker in League of Legends? Is he our Faker? Is he gonna sit on the throne? Whatever the throne thing they have in League and StarCraft is, I can't remember.
That conversation would be accurate if we're talking about like the start of Faker. Like, is it the emergence?
The emergence of Faker. People are like, oh, jersey sales. Look, at the end of the day, let's not go any further with it. It feels like three of us are leaning Dallas Fuel here very slightly, and Custa is on the San Francisco Shock train.
I'm on Shock, but like,
you're on Shock? Okay, all right. Well,
then
We can coin flip it.
no, we're not fucking coin flipping this. Sorry.
Why not?
Okay, sure. Jesus fucking Christ. 3-hour show here, and these guys want to fucking retort the coin
I think
flipping.
it is a coin flip. I genuinely think it's who shows up. Like, I don't think I think it's hard to make
Like, how
arguments
can
that
you?
one is
Yeah,
better
I
than
think
the
it's
other.
really
Like,
tough to definitively say like
All right.
either of these teams are favored.
All right, you fuckers. Like, give me who's heads, who's tails?
Dallas's heads.
Dallas's heads.
They
Shock our
win it.
tails.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, actually, I take it back. Let's not coin flip it. Let's not coin flip it.
Playing to win, baby.
I'll respect the coin.
The Vast is already getting ready for the Tasmo DM.
I'll respect the coin.
Save predictions.
I'll respect it.
Bank it in. Oh, I gotta do this shit. Oh my
Shock.
God.
Yeah, that's whatever. Wait.
I hereby attest that I'm a legal resident of the 50 United States. Oh, I'm gonna have to do this off stream. Sorry, guys. All right, there we go. Holy shit. 3-hour marathon fucking podcast, and here we are.
That is
And then on a coin flip. Bren's player of the week. Who the fuck is Bren's player of the week? All right, there's a few different ones. There were some good interviews this past week. I don't know, fucking Hardy or something.
Is the player of the week.
I thought Sam's interview was the funniest.
Sam's interviews with the orange juice martini.
I thought Sam's interview was quite hilarious. I'm always down to give it to a player that's just like, yeah, I'm benched. What of it? I think that's so funny.
I'm also down to give it to Danny if we didn't want to give it to a player. I think what Danny does for the league with his translating, his ability to like pull those things out of like, you know, the fact that we can have Moby Dick and Chatty have a conversation in the middle of a selection show without bumping to like 19 different people is pretty impressive. But I'm good
Do
for
you want to
it.
get married?
No, that's not allowed anymore.
Okay.
You want to give it to both?
Let's give it to let's give it to the selection show. I think it was a fun selection show, and let's give it to all the people that participated, because I think everyone did a great job. Honestly, that selection show was really fun, and I think all the players did a great job and all the.
Two members of the desk giving it to their own show, huh?
Well, no, me and Johnny are the least impactful people of that entire show. We're just standing there reacting in the background.
Selection show in the scientific community.
Okay, what did the scientific community do this time around?
I don't know. Bren just likes them a lot.
Which is
Well,
Convincing.
Bren is currently off the goop in Turkey, so like I think we'll just give it to the selection show. Fuck it. There you go.
Okay, selection show gets Bren's player of the week. And before we wrap it up,
congratulations.
we'll end on this very fun note that someone pointed out in chat that a few weeks ago, Reiner tweeted out that it's a coin flip meta.
See?
He coin flipped
See?
the
Look at
finals.
that, huh?
So
Full
thank you,
circle.
chat. We're tweeting it out. We went full circle.
Oh man.
All right, that's gonna do it for Plat Chat Overwatch episode 142. 3 hours and 5 minutes. I'm gonna cut down this VODs a little bit so I can upload the audio. Don't worry about timestamps. They'll come at some point later today, Tuesday, hopefully. So thank you, Custa, Avast, AVRL, for being on. We'll see if our bracket comes into fruition. Any last words before I press this stop streaming button? Goodbye.
Jimmy, fuck.